Mortem would like to thank Original Cinematic for sponsoring this week's episode. Original Cinematic is an independent production company that has made it their mission to create, produce, and promote films that are inclusive, honor women, promote the LGBTQIA+ community, and provide prominent positions and roles to POC actors and filmmakers, and promote the films of marginalized and underrepresented populations. These are all things that are extremely important to our podcast as well.
Original Cinematic is currently accepting scripts and treatments. Both William and Xxena Rush are also available via email or Zoom to discuss writing and provide input and resources to all aspiring writers free of charge. Their information will be made available in the show notes. There may be delays due to a hectic schedule and all projects being read on a first-come, first-served basis, but everything will be read and responded to. William Rush has individually produced numerous projects, including Pack is Here, Before, The Cottage, The Winemaker, and Day by Day. Their award-winning film Group premiered and was celebrated at multiple film festivals as well as screenings both in person and via Zoom that was graciously made available to us and our patrons.
Original Cinematic has many exciting projects on the horizon. Their next film, Immersion, has been completed. The award-winning Sweetener is in development. Fetish begins shooting in September, and Encore will begin next spring. Their documentary, Women in Conversation, is slated for a September release, and we are looking forward to each and every one of them. It is truly an honor to partner with Original Cinematic, and we can't thank them enough for their contribution to our show. And now, back to our regularly scheduled program. Salutations! Welcome to Pod Mortem. I'm Travis Hunter-Sayapin, joined as always by my co-hosts, my sister and my brother-in-law.
Hi, I'm Reneé Hunter-Vasquez.
Hi, I'm John Paul Vasquez.
This week, we're broadcasting live from Shady Rest Convalescent Home, discussing the 2002 comedy horror film, Bubba Ho-Tep. This film was written and directed by Don Coscarelli, based upon a short story written by Joe R. Lansdale. Following a lack of interest in the project from every major studio he brought it to, Coscarelli took it upon himself to bring this unique idea to life. Crafted with care and an independent spirit, Bubba Ho-Tep would captivate audiences upon its release with its wildly original premise and incredibly committed cast, as well as its elements of humor and adherence to horror, while also adeptly tackling themes one wouldn't expect from the film's synopsis. The film would attain immediate cult status upon release and garner several awards, with rumors of a sequel still gestating over 2 decades later. This film was suggested to us by friend of the show, Justice Bernard. We'd like to thank Justice for his continued support of the show, as well as this suggestion. So, Bubba Ho-Tep, what were your first impressions on the film?
This was a first-time watch for me. I've heard about it a little bit. I know I've heard you mention it a lot, T. And I've heard it here and there. Never watched it. Just didn't know anything about it. The name, I'll be honest, I genuinely thought this was going to be a Bruce Campbell role. I thought he was Bubba Ho-Tep.
Okay.
I did too.
He was doing something, and I was like, okay, this is going to be cool. We all love Bruce Campbell.
Of course.
I don't want to spoil anything, but that's just the name of the movie. I mean, he is in it, and there's surrounding whatever, but he's, that's not him. But this was pretty fun. I did get a lot of... it did remind me a little bit of like Grumpy Old Man or like The Odd Couple or whatever. And it was just like there's two people, friends, they're doing whatever, kind of adventure or whatever's going on here. But this was very fun. This was a pretty cool little movie. I won't say for me, in my opinion, it didn't do anything spectacular. It wasn't like I'm wanting to watch it. No disrespect, but I'm not wanting to watch it immediately. You know what I mean? I think right now I'm okay watching it for the one time for a little bit and then maybe revisiting it at some point in the future.
Question mark.
Yeah, question mark. But I mean, it was fun and it was really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I don't fully know what I was expecting. I went into it pretty open-minded. It's Bruce Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
The title is like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I know it's indie, but it still was not what I was expecting. I think it's a lot of fun. I think that it is surprisingly existential at times.
Yeah.
I think it does have some pretty like deep and profound messaging that I don't know that I would say it gets lost, but I think that it's hard to hold on to those themes and messages when the things that happen in this movie are happening and when the dialogue that is happening in this movie is happening.
See, I was going to say the stuff that people are saying.
Yeah. I think it's that. But then you get these really like sober moments of like existentialism and just life and reflection.
Yeah.
And it's really profound and kind of sad and bittersweet. And it's like, wait, I thought we were fill in the blank. You know what I mean? But no, I think that this was an interesting watch. I think that I've never seen a movie like it before. I think that Bruce Campbell the whole cast really does a really good job. I think that it is a lot of fun. I really loved those moments of just kind of reflection and kind of those deeper themes that we dip our toes into a little bit.
Yeah.
And I really like this idea of kind of these older characters out here doing shit.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? I like that. I think that's refreshing. That's not something that we see a lot. But it is a pretty fucking bonkers story. Like to the point where it's almost like Mad Libs.
Yeah.
Like where the hell did this come from?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, I think it's a good time. I think that, like you said, John Paul, I'm not like, oh, fuck, let's watch Bubba Ho-Tep again.
Yeah.
But I am glad that I've seen it. And I think that it is kind of an accomplishment in like low budget B horror filmmaking.
Yeah.
I think that it's a good time.
I think that all of that is very, very fair.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to remember the first time that I watched this film. I know the only reason I watched it was because of Bruce Campbell.
Right.
Although, if I were to hear this premise today, I'd be like, I gotta see that. Because that is just a wild idea.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do remember watching it the first time. I don't really remember much from it aside from Bruce Campbell.
Okay.
And I think it is because he is so surprisingly captivating in this specific role.
Right.
He always steals your attention whenever he's on screen in anything that he's in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I was really, really surprised by the depth that he adds to some moments for this weird-ass character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was legitimately impressed. But I think that watching it now, it is a kind of uneven film.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there are these surprising meditations on mortality and like the life lived / the life not lived, or this perfect idea of what your life should be.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's also some creature stuff.
Yeah.
And the creature stuff, I feel like, really does take a back seat for a lot of this film.
It
It does.
And when you hear this premise and you hear this idea, you think that this is what's going to dominate the entirety of this runtime.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't.
Yeah, not at all.
So it's just kind of shocking. But I think that in its entirety, if you hear this premise, I mean, you get what you get with this kind of a film. And it's not, you're not expecting anything incredibly groundbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very fun idea that they play through and play with, and then you're good. You're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think that there is a lot of room in horror for explorations of fun ideas like this.
Oh,
Absolutely.
definitely.
And I think that Bruce Campbell is kind of the perfect actor to embody what they're trying to do here.
Yeah.
And I flat out appreciate this idea of like, and we'll get into it, of course, but two conspiracy theories playing out.
Yeah. Literally.
And it's just a very, very, you're not going to find anything like this.
Yeah.
And that's really rare, I think. I will say the humor for me is a little hit or miss.
Yeah.
I think that Bruce Campbell sells it all with such commitment that he gets away with a lot.
Right.
But I feel like, I don't know, there's just something about it that even with the short runtime, I feel like the pacing is very strange.
The pacing is off
It
for
is,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
I will sing praises for the score. I think the music is fantastic.
I agree.
I think that their use of their budget and how everything looks and feels is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like a low-budget film, but it does also feel like a well-made, well-crafted film.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And so I was just very impressed by that because, again, this is so easy. This premise is just like, this whole thing's going to be ridiculous. Don't put a lot of thought into it. Don't put a lot of anything into it. Just make it. But you feel how much was put into this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because even that, hearing you say that he shopped it around and nobody was interested, I honestly would have thought anybody being like, the people who are like in the movies, like Bruce Campbell and then his counterpart, I would have thought that anybody would have been like, yes, let's pick that up. Yeah, even give it to our one, or even if it's a smaller like subdivision film company, give it to them, let them do it. For everybody to be like, no, we'll pass. The idea is, it's an idea.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think that's the problem.
But I mean, it's fucking Bruce Campbell, and like you're saying, it does look cool.
It does. And I think that even the creature that we meet is a pretty cool design.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess if this were part of like a larger Elvis cinematic universe, then maybe the studios would have bid for it.
Yeah.
But this is absolutely one of those films that if somebody's like, oh, I can't stand that film, it's like, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
And if someone is like, that's my favorite film ever, I'm like, yeah, I get it.
No, yeah.
There is a very special charm to it that is very wholly, uniquely its own.
Mm-hmm.
But before we dive into the plot of this film, I would like to talk a little bit about the production of it.
Okay.
I got a lot of information from the following sources that I'll be kind of referencing throughout the episode as well as this portion.
Mm-hmm.
I watched a making-of featurette, also a featurette called The King and I, an interview with Ain't It Cool News with the director, the original writer of the story, and Bruce Campbell.
Okay.
And a section of BubbaHo-Tep.com. So, while this film would be released in the year 2002, the beginnings of how this film came to be actually take us all the way back to 1988.
God damn.
This was the year that filmmaker Don Coscarelli visited a bookstore in California. He was in search of a book in the horror genre.
Mm-hmm.
And so he asked the clerk behind the counter for a recommendation, and the clerk immediately recommends a novel by Joe R. Lansdale, who happens to be an author from Texas.
Hey.
Yeah.
And he says that Lansdale always writes stories with a high body count, so you'll love it.
Okay.
So naturally, Coscarelli purchases the novel, and he becomes a very fast fan of Lansdale's work. But later that same year, Lansdale releases a novel called The Drive-In, and Coscarelli immediately falls in love with it after reading it, and so he reaches out to Lansdale in the hopes to adapt it into a feature film.
Okay.
Coscarelli had already made a name for himself as a horror director as, I think, the creator of the Phantasm series.
Oh, all right.
Which is a blind spot for me. I still have not seen any of those films.
Me too.
Yeah, I've seen like the movie posters. That's it.
Yeah.
They come highly requested on our requests.
They are, yeah.
Maybe soon.
Yeah, maybe.
But Coscarelli and Lansdale meet and they discuss The Drive-In extensively. But unfortunately, the project never takes off, and so it just kind of dies then and there.
Oh.
But it isn't until 1994 when two very random ideas cross Lansdale's mind. The first is while watching Boris Karloff's 1932 classic version of The Mummy,
Okay.
he hears the name Imhotep. And as he's watching it, he cracks a joke that if Imhotep were to have been in East Texas, they would have called him Bubba Ho-Tep.
All right.
And he just puts that in his back pocket.
Yeah.
That's got a ring to it.
But this very small spark of an idea stays with him. And sometime later, he is approached by an editor to contribute a story to a short story anthology called The King is Dead, all stories centered around Elvis Presley. Lansdale takes this assignment and decides to join it with the idea that he had, the very loose idea.
He was like, if Elvis was in East Texas.
It's like, I got it.
This is it. He just thinks that about everything.
Yeah. But he also was very fascinated with the popular conspiracy theory of Elvis still being alive.
Okay.
And so he would go to supermarkets and he'd see the tabloids of, Elvis is on Mars or whatever.
Right.
And so he just kind of put these two ideas together, these two very disparate ideas that have nothing to do with each other.
Nothing.
Which is honestly pretty remarkable. And I know as writers, very envious of someone who can just take this tiny ass inkling of an idea and turn it into something like this.
My thought was, because me and my friend Kristen, we would do writing exercises where you're like, we pick a common theme and then we each, go to our corners and write a story about it.
Yeah.
It almost feels like a writing challenge where it's like, you can write whatever you want, but it has to include Elvis Presley and a mummy. And it's like that. It's like, it's so outlandish.
It is.
Like and again, full respect for being able to cohesively marry those two ideas.
Yeah.
But that is what it feels like. It feels like a silly writing challenge to get like the juices flowing.
Right. I am a little surprised he didn't include Bat Boy. If he's reading those,
You're like, he was all over.
Yeah. He's there with Elvis. What the hell?
The editor was like, we're more just focused on Elvis, please.
That boy's like, wow.
That's the next anthology.
Yeah, that's who Elvis is going after next.
If Dracula was in East Texas.
He'd be a boy and a bat.
And Bubba.
Bubba Bat Boy. But the story is eventually written and published.
Okay.
And it is later discovered and read by Coscarelli.
Yeah.
Who is immediately sold on this very far out premise alone. And he feels that it would make a perfect feature film. So he options the rights from Lansdale, which surprises the hell out of the author. And not because filmmakers hadn't shown interest in his work.
Yeah.
Apparently a lot of A-list directors had, including David Lynch, who optioned one of his projects for 3 years.
Damn.
But what really shocked him was the fact that he wanted this story.
I bet. Yeah.
Lansdale thought that it was the last of his work that would ever receive attention like this. And after it was optioned, he even joked that he was happy to take Coscarelli's money because he's like, this is never going to get made. But Coscarelli finishes the screenplay for the film the following year, and he starts to shop it around major studios. And as I said in the intro, everyone he submits it to rejects it. And he said that the reason is they seemed to hate everything that he loved about it. And they told him that there was no way that they could convince their target demographic to sit through a 90-minute film about two elderly folks taking on a mummy.
I'm sorry. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to me because it's like, there's no way that anyone would buy into this incredibly interesting premise.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you talking about? But after these constant rejections, Coscarelli decides that the only way to get this film made is to do it independently. And knowing that the film will have to be low budget, Coscarelli realizes that he's going to have to call in a few favors and get creative when it comes to casting.
Okay.
So, almost serendipitously, around this time, Coscarelli receives a voicemail in his office from the office of Sam Raimi.
Okay.
And it's somebody who allegedly works for Sam Raimi inviting Coscarelli to a screening of Close Encounters of the Third Kind that Sam Raimi is supposed to be hosting.
Oh, damn.
So Coscarelli gives Sam Raimi's office a call to kind of iron out the details of this thing. And Raimi and his assistant are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It was an absolute prank. For some very strange reason, they both realized that there is no screening. And it was just somebody who happened to call Coscarelli's office with just total bullshit.
What the fuck?
But through this phone call, they have a conversation, get reacquainted, and because they had known each other from the past.
Yeah.
And so they're chatting, and they're like, what are you working on? And Coscarelli's like, I got this film called Bubba Ho-Tep. And I'm, working on casting and all this stuff. And Sam Raimi's like, you need to talk to Bruce Campbell.
It was probably just Bruce doing that to get him to call him.
Say, I hear you're working on it.
Yeah.
But he eventually gets reacquainted with Bruce Campbell. And after a few discussions and several assurances, Bruce Campbell is cast in the film as Elvis Presley.
Okay.
Also through connections, Coscarelli is able to cast Ossie Davis,
Damn.
which is remarkable.
Yeah.
Yes.
And along with the casting of Campbell, both of these actors lend an incredible amount of credibility to the film that he's trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
So after assembling the rest of the cast and securing the filming locations, the shooting finally begins. And depending on the source, because I heard two things, it either lasted 30 full days or 90 full days.
God damn.
But it was with a skeleton crew to keep the production costs low.
Yeah.
And they finally wrapped at the end of 2001. It's at this point that Coscarelli takes all of the footage and locks himself in an editing bay for several months. And the final edit of the film is finally completed in the spring of 2002.
Okay.
Very fittingly, the film premieres to a sold-out crowd in Las Vegas.
Oh, man.
And it receives an overwhelmingly positive response.
Yeah.
And so Coscarelli is like, you know what? Maybe I should take it back to the major studios and see if they'd be interested in this completed project.
Yeah.
They're not.
Even with the buzz?
Even with everything around it, the buzz, the people who are involved, the fact that it's finished, all this stuff.
Yeah.
They have the same exact complaint that they had with his script in the 90s. No one will be interested in seeing a film with two old people fighting a mummy.
We, our society and culture is so youth obsessed.
It's unbelievable.
and
That's
youth
kinda crazy.
worshiping.
Yeah.
That I think from their perspective, I can see how that would be the knee jerk. Like, oh, nobody's gonna want to because all they care about is the return.
Yeah.
you know what I
yeah.
mean.
I do want to say that it is a little funny to think that Full Moon or like Dark Castle wouldn't have been like, sure, you got it.
Somebody.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Come on, Puppet Master. How fucking silly was that first movie?
Those-
they have a
those
lot of
puppets were young.
yeah, dolls and Dearest. They got all that weird
They
shit
sure
down.
were.
They were
He had a
youthful.
They were
very
youthful,
smooth
that's
face. That one puppet. I see Bruce Campbell as like a cult figure.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you have Bruce Campbell in something, you have a giant audience already built in.
Oh,
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's just kind of wild to me. And I'm sorry, I don't understand what it is with studios, but people of all ages go to see the movie.
Yes. Yeah, they do.
No, they kick the old people out.
Really?
Well, that's how they act. It's like that's crazy.
And I know I brought it up a minute ago, but I watched the movie Grumpy Old Men
Right.
in the theater, and I was young as fuck when it came out, and I
Yeah.
thought that movie was great. I what does it matter as long as the movie's good?
It's just a really unfair generalization, I think.
It
Yeah.
is. And it was a poor choice on their part.
Yeah.
But it prompts Coscarelli to take it upon himself to personally premiere the film across the country in a roadshow format.
Okay.
And so he goes to film festivals, he goes to various independent theaters, and many of the showings are attended by the cast who provide a Q&A after the screening.
Oh, that's cool.
So it was probably an awesome experience.
Yeah.
But it proves incredibly successful, and the film garners cult status. It wins a ton of awards. I think the screenplay won the Bram Stoker Award.
Damn.
And it would even go on to break even at the box office. I think the budget was $1 million. It made 1.2.
Okay.
And since its release, there have been comic book adaptations. Lansdale even wrote a sequel novel. And there are continued rumors of a sequel that have, ebbed and flowed over the years.
Yeah.
Right.
But the cult status of the film continues to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all I have. Now, before we suck this film's soul, we would like to issue a warning for spoilers. Pod Mortem is a very in-depth podcast, and in thoroughly discussing horror films, we have no choice but to spoil a thing or two. If you don't wish to be spoiled, please go watch the film, then come back and enjoy the show. If you've already seen the film or don't care about spoilers, let's take care of business. So the film begins with ominous strings over a black background, and punctuated by echoing plods in the score and low vocalized tones, we get the following definitions in white. Ho-Tep. Noun. 1. Relative or descendant of the 17 Egyptian dynasties, 3100 to 1550 BC. 2. Family surname of an Egyptian pharaoh. King.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also get the definition of Bubba, which is also a noun. 1, male from the southern U.S. 2, good old boy. 3, cracker, redneck, trailer park resident.
I feel like being in the South for so long, it's like brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm like, yeah, but I know what Bubba is.
Yeah. It's like, you don't tell me what Bubba is.
Hey, I do appreciate the definitions, though.
True.
You know,
not everyone's from the South. I do
yeah.
understand.
True.
That.
But suddenly, swirling through a small gap of jagged, towering stone with a swell of strings in the score, we get the title, Bubba Ho-Tep. A black and white newsreel flickers to life within a square box at the center of the frame. White text over the shimmering face of a sarcophagus, which translated from German reads, "Found in Egypt, treasures of the pharaohs." And I did see in an interview that this is an authentic German newsreel that they bought from a stock library.
Oh, wow.
But the director said that the following translations of what is said is not accurate at all.
That's why I was like, wait, what?
They're like, we're trying to fit our story. But among B-roll of an archaeological site in Egypt, we find a group gathered around mounds of dirt, hard at work, before cutting to 2 men dressed in robes and head coverings who rise from an excavated tomb. They carry mummified skeletal remains on a flat board, followed by colleagues who themselves have retrieved various artifacts from the depths of the dirt. A narrator explains in German, "A strange discovery in Egypt. Adventurers unearth the tomb of King Amenhotep near Luxor and Thebes. The mummy and his priests are brought to the surface and see the light of day for the first time in over 4,000 years. After the discoveries are laid gingerly on the ground just outside of the tomb, we cut to the iron gates of an expansive white building, soon to be taken inside, where patrons peruse the unearthed antiquities, the narrator continuing as we zero in once again on the shining face of a sarcophagus, that the mummified remains will be coming soon to a museum near you."
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Oh,
yeah.
It's not potentially.
No.
I did like that opening a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it gives kind of this thing that is going to be hanging over the film
Right.
and maybe explaining it before they explain it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I do also think that it takes a long time to explain what's going on. But to steady hi-hats, a simmering organ, and dreamily arpeggiated guitar chords, we glide down from sunlight and the swaying branches of trees and a light breeze to settle on the modest exterior of a 2-story nursing home. As a nurse in her whites pushes an elderly man across the porch in his wheelchair, we get on-screen text reading, "Mud Creek, Texas, present day." We're then taken inside, floating through the halls, the golden glow of small lights that line either side of the warm, earth-toned walls, caught in the reflection of the tiled floor below. The score suddenly begins to warp into an ominous hum, as dingy as the baseboards that we pass in the hall on our journey into one of the rooms. I did want to talk very quickly about the score.
Okay.
I think that it is really one of the strengths of this film.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just love all of the instruments used and the varying tones throughout what is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I was really, really surprised to learn that the composer of this film was Brian Tyler. So this is the 3rd film in a row that I've written a script for that the composer was this man.
What the hell?
That was not planned.
He's working.
He's doing it. He's doing his thing, man. But I did see that because of the budget and them trying to keep everything low budget, they asked him, and he did. He performed every single instrument in this score personally.
God damn.
And he also does all of the vocalizing that we hear throughout the film.
Bet.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Just pay me for everything.
Yeah.
For real.
I got-
Yeah. But as the crisp guitar chords return, we reach our destination, passing an occupied bed to center on the one just beyond it, where we find a man tossing and turning beneath his thin beige blankets. We press in on him as he ceases his stirring, his brow furrowed beneath his graying pompadour, his face framed by white sideburns and his eyes clenched closed. This is Elvis Presley, played by Bruce Campbell.
I don't think I need to introduce this man. I mean, Evil Dead, amongst other things.
Right.
I mean, we know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Burn Notice.
Yes.
His voice deep in his signature Southern drawl, he narrates over his sleeping frame that he was dreaming. It's about to get real blue Christmas.
Immediately.
Yes. But he adds that he was dreaming, that his dick was out, and that he was checking to see if that infected bump on the head of it had filled with pus again. He posits that if it had, he was going to name it after his ex-wife, Scylla, and bust it by jacking off. Look,
You're dreaming about this?
apparently, we all have different dreams.
Yeah. I don't.
Should probably talk to somebody about the meaning of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say.
This is the first, but it is not the last that we are talking about Elvis's penis and its ailments.
Mhm.
I did see in that featurette or that making of video that when they approached Bruce Campbell, because they were like, he's kind of perfect. The director said that he had met him at a Fangoria convention, and he had everybody eating out of the palm of his hand. And he said that this was pre-Bruce Mania, but he's just always captivated people.
Yeah.
And so he's like, and there's a passing resemblance. He was like, it's perfect, you know? So he sends him the script, and Bruce Campbell said that his agents were like, do not do this. But he read it and he was like, okay, this is officially the weirdest script I've ever written. So he said he called and was like, because they describe, I guess in the screenplay, what is going on with his penis in pretty extreme detail. And he calls him and says, he's like, I have one question. Are you going to show the penis? And he's like, no. And he goes, okay, I'm in.
Well,
Hey,
there's,
He was like, I just need to know.
there's a line, you know.
I will say, and I'll be honest, watching this, I really enjoy what Bruce Campbell does with it, and it being very funny, the movie.
Uh-huh.
I will say, and I told your sister, I feel like Kurt Russell could have done the same thing here.
Kurt Russell,
Being Elvis,
Yeah.
and everything, dialogue, everything the exact same. I think it still would have worked.
he's played Elvis twice already.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just saying.
This one would be a lot different
Yeah.
than Forrest
But
Gump
he
and
is funny.
Elvis.
But Kurt Russell can be funny.
He can
Oh,
be.
of course.
So I still feel like with his ability, he could have done this too.
I know in the future when they were talking about sequels,
Yeah.
he was one of the people that they threw around hoping that he might be interested.
Hell yeah.
But I'm just surprised, honestly, how deep Bruce Campbell gets into a lot of the really, like you said, existential.
Yes.
Yeah.
He plays
Yeah.
those moments with such sincerity.
Mm-hmm.
But he does say a lot of wild shit.
Yeah.
he does. But I feel like this is one of those openings from, kind of the exposition at the very beginning to the way the title card even looks
Mm-hmm.
to this being the first line
Yeah.
that we hear from our protagonist. Like, it's very much like, okay, whoever's still here, we're going to have a great time. You know what I mean?
Mhm. You're in or you're out.
Yeah.
Did that get the last of them? All right, let's go. Like, that's what it feels like. Because my note was, whatever happened to hello? How are you? My name is.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Elvis, I guess.
No, this is who he is.
Yeah.
But he says at least that's what he'd like to think he would do. Dreams let you think things like that. But he admits that the truth is he hadn't had a hard-on in years. I was like, we're really getting to know him.
Yeah.
He's an open book.
His eyes open slowly as he peers through small slits over to the door of his room, watching in quick flashes as visitors and staff pass by in the hall. He blinks absently as the room is suddenly filled with nurses and orderlies, their voices warped as they tend to their tasks at a rapid pace, Elvis's view of them seemingly fast-forwarding through the monotonous motions of their routines.
Was this like the passage of time, or is it just the way he's like, because he's still kind of groggy or sleepy, or?
I took it as almost just the mundanity.
Okay.
Like, this is my everyday, seeing this every day.
Yeah, they're just hauling ass. So I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
what the-
they were.
But at the far wall, a small electrical fan whirs to life on the top of a dresser, its old metal blades clicking noisily as they rotate, an exiting nurse taking notice of it as she jots a note on her clipboard and steps into the hall. As soon as she does, Elvis turns his head away, letting out a lamentful and pained sigh. But the room's silence is suddenly disturbed when Bull, Elvis's roommate, played by Harrison Young, hacks a harsh cough that he can't seem to shake. It rattles him, his sharp and repeated expulsions catching Elvis's attention, who reaches out for their shared nightstand to snag his signature thick-rimmed sunglasses and put them on. And you might recognize Bull. We did talk about him a very long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
House of a Thousand
Yes.
Corpses.
Yeah.
But Elvis then presses a red button on a nearby controller, the mattress of his adjustable bed slowly curving on an incline to lift him up as Bull continues fighting for his life. Elvis looks away in disgust and disappointment, the voice in his head narrating, "My God, man, how long have I been here?" As he glances down at his hands, an ostentatious ring decorating his small pinky finger, he wonders if he's really awake now, or just dreaming that he is, and how his plans could have gone so wrong. As Bull finally settles and catches his breath, Elvis cradles his belly in his palms, curious as to when they're going to be served lunch, but remembering what kind of food they serve here, and his interest immediately dissipates. He then glances longingly out of the window, pondering if Priscilla knew that he was still alive. Would she come and see him? And would they still want to fuck, or would they merely just talk about it?
We are going to talk about it at the very least. I love the assumption there.
Yes.
He asks, is there finally really anything to life other than food, shit, and sex? His hand clumsily snags a mirror from the opposite bedside table, his face crumbling in dismay as he catches his own reflection. And this angle isn't flattering to anyone, but
No.
he does look terrible. But he peers at himself from under the bottom of his sunglasses, lamenting, well, God damn it. How could I have gone from the king of rock and roll to this? Old guy in a resting home in East Texas with a growth on his pecker. A roaring crowd rises from the depths of Elvis's memory, and he remembers himself in his younger years, center stage in a black bejeweled jumpsuit, red lights illuminating him from below as a pair of panties are tossed from the audience at the feet of his bright white boots.
I really didn't know going into this that Bubba Ho-Tep was a Giallo film, so that was cool to learn as I was watching. But
No. I'm all shook up with that.
But I did want to talk about the costuming since we've seen this jumpsuit.
Right.
So I saw on that featurette the costume designer Shelley Kay said that everything that Elvis wears is custom made.
Oh, wow.
And I believe they're called B&K Enterprises. They're the only ones licensed to do Elvis's jumpsuits.
Okay.
And so they got the we'll see a couple outfits. They got those from them. They contracted them to make Elvis's jumpsuits for Bubba Ho-Tep.
Okay.
Because they make them and license them. And so they gave them 3. This is one of them. And we're going to see, obviously more later. But they needed to return them. They couldn't even keep them.
Oh.
And so in that thing, they had one in the warehouse from the film. It's a white one that we see later that Bruce Campbell signed the tag of. But yeah, these are like legit handmade. Like the studs are hammered in one by one. Like these are legit fucking Elvis jumpsuits.
So not even the jumpsuit, the tag.
He signed the tag.
Yeah.
That's like, no, you
Yeah.
can't ruin.
Be careful.
Yeah.
Be careful. But they look really impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
And in all the scenes that they're in, they do, like, if you look up pictures of late era Elvis,
Yeah.
it's pretty spot on.
Yeah.
But Elvis returns to the present day, collapsed in his bed, worse for wear and well worn with age, as he places the mirror back onto his nightstand regretfully. He steels himself for a moment before lifting his blankets to glance down at the growth that he's honestly spent a lot of the screen time talking about already. But he reaches his hand down to it cautiously, worrying that it might be cancer and noting that no one around here seems to know or wants to. But he unhands his unit when a loud guttural moan escapes Bull, startling him. Elvis can only watch as the man's eyes grow wide as the rattling coughs return. A look of sincere sympathy washes over Elvis's face as Bull locks eyes with him, reaching a desperate hand in his direction, which Elvis attempts to reciprocate from a distance, only for Bull to let out a deep shudder as he slumps back to his pillow, his eyes slowly closing for the last time as he takes his eternal rest. Elvis can only turn away as he settles back into his sheets, his eyes darting in disbelief behind his dark glasses.
He fucking died?
Right there.
Yeah.
I was just a little shocked because he's just chilling.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're just listening to him talk about his dreams or whatever, and then dude starts coughing, and then it's like, oh, what the fuck? And then look over again, and he's just, that was it.
And Elvis doesn't even seem to take it like, it's like, it happens here.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, really. But a jovial slide guitar reverberates in the score as we're taken outside, a long black hearse parked out front with its trunk resting open, as we press in on the dingy, dirt-covered sign perched at the bottom of the porch steps. Mud Creek Shady Rest Convalescence Home. So this location that is used for the nursing home.
Yeah.
I read that I guess Coscarelli was at one of his son's football games.
Mm-hmm.
And while he was there, he noticed this building right next door and realized that this entire space is like an abandoned hospital campus.
Oh, wow.
And so he decided this place could be used for basically everything that he needed for Bubba Ho-Tep.
Okay.
Damn.
And so he had two collaborators that he had worked with since Phantasm, Danny Vecchione and Justin Zaharzik.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically moved in to this space and started converting it to all the sets that they would need.
Yeah.
And so this campus is not only the Shady Rest nursing home, but literally everything else that we see in the film from here.
Oh, wow.
Including that little bit from the concert of Elvis's younger years.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
A certain mobile living space.
Right.
That we'll see later. Like everything was filmed in this one spot.
That's really cool.
But we rise from the sign outside to discover two hearse drivers played by Daniel Roebuck and Daniel Schweiger maneuvering both ends of a stretcher where Bull rests on top inside of a white body bag.
Daniel Roebuck. We talked about him in Final Destination.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
He's also in The Fugitive.
Oh.
He's in a lot of Rob Zombie films, too.
Yeah.
And I know that we've seen him there.
Well, when you said it, I was like, I've said his name
Yeah.
before.
Yes. But as the men load him into the back of the hearse, they stand there for a moment, catching their breath. The first driver grows existential, commenting that it really makes you wonder what kind of life this old guy had. His kids, his grandkids, his legacy. He directs his coworker to look at Bull now. But the second driver just scoffs, who gives a shit, before callously slamming the back door closed.
Well, that's the kindness and compassion that you really,
Yeah.
you really hope for once
damn,
your
man.
day comes.
I look, there are a lot of moments and meditations on these kinds of things. They are pretty on the nose, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that they are a lot more successful with Bruce Campbell's narration.
Right, right.
And that's another thing that was cut. This film originally had a completely different, like, third-party narrator. And this guy was narrating everything almost like a story happening.
Okay.
But then whenever they got to the editing process, they did have some sections of Bruce Campbell, and they're like, these are just way more successful.
Yeah, I think it probably works better the way that we got it.
But through the dimly lit halls inside, and with the aid of a cane, walks an elderly woman played by Edith Jefferson. In her pink cardigan and purple dress, she stands in stark contrast with her grungy surroundings as she makes her way through them, But she stops suddenly at the end of the hall when the loud mechanical respirations of an iron lung machine, which is parked in the hall, catches her attention. She approaches it, reaching a warm hand to brush the hair of the woman who rests inside of it, played by Solange Morand, who peers up at her through her thick eyeglasses. The elderly woman gently plucks the glasses off of the other woman's face, muttering, "Make you comfortable," which I thought she was being very nice.
Yeah.
But she holds the glasses in her hands, admiring the frames and lenses with a smirk before looking both ways and putting them in her pocket.
Whose grandma is this?
Yeah.
I know.
Sticky fingers ass lady, man. I was like, I thought it was sweet too.
Yeah. The woman in the iron lung weakly cries, "No," as the elderly woman just chuckles, rounding the corner and making her exit. But as she looks both ways before crossing down an adjacent hall, she notices a cart parked in front of a resident's closed door, which is filled with gifts topped with bright bows and a vibrant arrangement of flowers. She can't seem to believe her fortune as a look of "don't mind if I do" registers on her face, and she reaches her greedy hands for one of the gift boxes.
Just on the way, I gotta take something.
Yeah, but I'm like, what in the fucking Haddonfield Memorial? Why is no one
I don't
watching
know.
them? No one is watching them.
They're all in the hot tub.
Yeah. But that night, soft music playing in the background, we pan across the walls of her room, decorated with dolls and several stuffed animals, to find the elderly woman resting comfortably in her bed, partaking in her pilfered prize, which turned out to be a box of chocolates. But just as she reaches her hand back into the container that rests on her nightstand, a low chittering noise interrupts her dastard dessert. Peering over the side of her bed, the elderly woman discovers what appears to be a large insect scuttling beneath it, accompanied by a musical sting. She glances over the other side, confused, when she barely spots another bug making a hasty retreat beneath the bed, too. In tight shots of her peering eyes and her collection of dolls who offer no assistance, the elderly woman is dismayed to discover a small lump at the bottom of her blankets, which creeps its way upward across her covered legs.
Small, those bugs are pretty big.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is a little lump, but I'd be like, what the fuck is that?
It's too much.
No, yeah, absolutely not.
She seethes. "I'm gonna squish you, cockroach," as she reaches her hands beneath her blankets, only for something sharp to puncture her flesh, the elderly woman screaming and drawing back her wounded and blood-covered palm. She rolls over, tumbling out of bed and clattering clumsily to the floor, reaching for her cane. Spying the mound still at the center of her sheets on the ground, she brings down the cane's stern wooden handle, the creature squealing in pain beneath it at every single strike. She then tears off the sheets, chuckling when she uncovers a massive scarab beetle resting in a pool of murky gray liquid.
That's not good.
No.
My note was, that is a goddamn scarab.
Yeah.
I don't think they're native to this
Region?
area. Yeah. I'm very concerned. I'm like, did he come with the chocolates?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Shit.
There's more evidence later.
Yeah,
That
he
he
just
does come with the chocolate.
maybe he likes it. Like he just enjoys the sweets. But the beetle lifts its head to her, bearing small fangs as it squeals in pain. But the elderly woman's grin grows somber when a figure, played by Bob Ivy, suddenly rises from the shadows at the corner of the room, a snarl permanently settled on its face beneath the feathered western hat, and its skeletal body exposed beneath the rags of its tattered clothing. It sets its sights on the elderly woman, who can do nothing but scream as the score swells sinisterly. When I saw the silhouette, I was like, oh shit, this is worse than I expected.
Yeah.
I did not expect to see this entire creature.
No, yeah.
No. Yeah, no.
Seeing it, I was like, oh, it just got way more interesting now.
Oh yeah. But again, this is something I thought would come later where it's like an unveiling of what this is.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, they're like, here's this.
No.
He's also here.
Yeah. Coscarelli had said that since the budget was so tight, he had to call in a lot of favors to even get this movie made. And one of the favors he called in was to K&B.
Unbelievable.
Oh.
And they believed in it so much that they did the project at cost of like
Wow.
materials and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So they said that they did the mask for Bob Ivy by obviously casting his face, and they casted his body. The mask, they said too, took like half an hour to apply.
Oh wow.
But they crafted foam pieces that are like sticking out of his body out of skeletal parts that they already had in their shop.
Okay.
So they crafted them and then glued them onto a spandex bodysuit, covered the bodysuit in foam latex, textured, sculpted, and painted it. So it looks like there are these hollows and recesses and like protruding bones and stuff because that texture is actually really there. And they said that the shirt was never real. It was never a real shirt.
Oh.
They took pieces of fabric and just added it piece by piece onto this latex bodysuit.
Okay.
But yeah, it was never a real shirt. It's just the way that they wanted it to look on the skeleton.
Yeah.
Which is like it's a unique creature.
It is.
Yeah.
I think he looks cool.
Oh, yeah.
And there are more explanations apparently as to why this creature is dressed as like a cowboy,
Right, right.
but it was cut out in the edit.
Yeah,
Okay.
I kind of thought we'd get some kind of explanation, but it's okay.
Yeah, well, we're in Texas, so
We're
I
in
just figured,
Texas.
you
He's
know.
Bubba Ho-Tep.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's basically it, is, if you are not from here and you want to fit in,
Yeah.
your ideas of the place,
Yeah.
maybe a little stereotypical.
So Bubba Ho-Tep, Bob Ivy, he does have stunt work credits for Powder in 95, Dark Rider in 91, and Near Dark in 87.
Very cool.
Yeah. He's got a lot of stunt work. He's done a lot of stuff.
The work that he does in this film is really impressive.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of stuff on a featurette that we'll get to as the plot progresses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But there are just some really staggering things that are required of stunt folk.
Yeah.
But we cut abruptly to Elvis's room, where he sleeps soundly in his bed, all alone after Bull's recent passing. As he breathes comfortably, he's suddenly overtaken by quick flashes of light and a vision of the elderly woman on the floor just outside of his room, clinging desperately to his doorframe in the hallway. Elvis is startled awake, and after taking a moment to collect himself, he peers through the dark toward his door, only to discover that what he witnessed wasn't a dream. The elderly woman holds onto the doorframe for dear life, her voice weakly pleading, "Help me," before she's promptly pulled out of sight.
Now you got a lawsuit on your hands.
Elvis groggily grabs his sunglasses, slowly putting them on to get a better look at the low-lit hall from his bed. And after he discovers that there isn't anything there, he breathes a sigh of relief as he removes his glasses, shifts into a more comfortable position, and returns to sleep.
Going back to bed was a wild choice.
Well, that didn't prove anything. You saw
No.
her get pulled
Yeah.
away. So,
It's like, oh, thank God that's over. Good night.
but the next morning, the hearse is once again parked outside. The back door opened once again to welcome the body of the elderly woman, who is set inside by the two hearse drivers from the day previous. After sliding the body bag deep into the back, the first driver turns to face his colleague, sharing, I was thinking. But he's quickly cut off by the second driver, who asks if he's about to get all weepy on him again. But the first driver denies this, snagging an aerosol can from the back and revealing that he was merely going to suggest using some of this deodorizer spray because she's smelling pretty ripe. After taking a whiff himself, the second driver realizes that this is indeed a good idea, and after letting loose a spray of the deodorizer, they slam the doors shut.
I know the clientele that is here. I know what this place is. But is like coming back to back like this normal?
That's the thing I would maybe that's probably their whole day, though, is just picking up people.
I guess, but like, I'd be like, damn, we're here again? I don't know. I was just surprised that nobody commented on it. It's like, this movie's been on for 10 minutes and I've seen y'all 2 times.
Yeah.
But back inside, Elvis is stirred awake by quick, sped-up flashes of the staff once again tending to their tedious tasks. A janitor, played by Joseph Primero, mops the checkered tiles, his pleasantries to a nearby nurse, played by Sean Okada, distorted as they move through their morning routines. The halls become congested with staff and visitors, the fan on the dresser clicking to noisy life before everything dissipates in a bright flash, and Elvis closes his eyes and attempts to collect himself. But his serenity is short-lived when he discovers Callie Thomas, played by Heidi Marnhow, now standing at the dresser, a loud screech emanating from the top drawer as she pulls it open and reaches inside.
Heidi Marnhow, she does have a credit in Phantasm 4 Oblivion from 98.
Oh, so reusing.
Yeah.
We love to see it.
Oh, yeah.
I did expect more of her in this film.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really kind of surprising.
This is almost like a vignette. Like, it's like a little detour, and then it's like, let's ruminate on that. Anyway, what were we doing again? Like,
Yeah.
It is odd because I really thought that this interaction was going to come back into play at all.
Yeah.
We get to a point where it's like, we got a mummy to fight.
Yeah.
Come on.
Forget that other shit.
But Elvis reaches for his glasses to get a better look from across the room as Callie holds a small case in her hands, opening it to reveal a Purple Heart medal. Her eyes trace the honorable item for a moment before closing the case and setting it aside to reach back into the drawer for a stack of black and white photographs. She cycles through them, the images weathered, as she lingers on a photo of a military man who stands in the middle of 2 smiling women, offering a jovial wave to the camera. She then piles these pictures on top of the Purple Heart case, her small black skirt sashaying as she saunters over to a garbage can between the 2 beds, stepping down to open the lid before tossing the photographs and the case to the bottom.
Damn.
Yeah.
The longing look in her eyes, and she's like, "No, fuck this shit."
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, I was like, what did he do?
Right.
Yeah.
Very fair. We do not learn.
No.
But Elvis, who has adjusted his bed upward to face her, asks with his top lip curling to a signature snarl if she's going to throw all that stuff out. When Callie says that she is, Elvis wonders if he could have some of it, the photographs, the Purple Heart, on account of the fact that Bill was real proud of it, and maybe even his tin of chocolates, too.
More importantly, one might say.
Callie supposes that he could, and as she bends over to reach into the trash to retrieve these items, Elvis steals a cheeky glance up Callie's skirt. His inner voice notes that the revealing of Callie's panties wasn't intentional or unintentional, resigned in the fact that Callie just didn't give a damn. She saw him as so physically and sexually non-threatening that she didn't mind if he got a bird's eye view of her love nest.
I think that this is the kind of writing that I really did appreciate in this film, more than like, I want to jerk off and break the sore at the end of my dick or whatever the opening was.
It's really funny because they start with that and they're like, yeah, we went too far.
Yeah.
They don't even go back to it.
We'll reel it back a little bit.
Sorry, guys.
This is the kind of writing where it's like, it is a complicated sentiment because it's like, you know, obviously he shouldn't be
right.
Like, ooga,
right,
you know,
right.
But it's like, that is a conversation to have where it's like, he doesn't even feel like he's seen as a man anymore, as a person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, it's a very intriguing and interesting conversation about aging and about, like we were saying earlier, a society so obsessed with youth, how it's easy to feel invisible or like a way that you have been regarded your whole life. You're not even seen that way anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that is such an interesting existential, sad conversation to have. And so having it while he's like, but I can see you're a pussy or whatever, like it is an interesting to frame it in such a way that this character is the one that's saying it. I think that it's good writing and it's so few and far between that when we get it, it's like, okay, damn, like this film does have something to say. And there's also a cowboy mummy.
There's a lot going on. But you're right, because you think about it and you're like, this idea, or at least just the idea of Elvis,
Yeah.
this American icon, this sex symbol, and it's gone.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah.
It could be anybody.
It's through no fault. You know what I mean? Like, it's like if to be this age, we are lucky.
Right.
And so to have that conversation of like, oh, but now I'm invisible. Now I'm the fucking curtains on the window. Like, it's just, I enjoy kind of ruminating in those ideas. And so it was very shocking to get that here after what we've seen so far.
Yeah, it did work. It did work, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Because I am watching this, and again, I'm 40. You know what I mean? So I know I'm not old.
No.
But I'm halfway. So I'm watching this, and it is an interesting, like you're saying, the words he's using and what he's saying, it is just like, oh, damn, time gets us all.
Yeah.
Nobody's outrunning time.
And again, it's a gift.
Yeah,
It's a
it
gift
is.
to
It
be
is.
that
It
old.
is. But
So
what
it's
he's saying, it is like that.
And like we talked about it kind of, I think, when we did X and maybe not so much Pearl because that was a flashback. But like I know that we did talk about it a little bit with X, and it's an interesting conversation to have that I feel like we don't get very often. And finding it here was surprising.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you think of elderly characters in horror films, like they're always more often than not just used for like,
So-
So it's kind of, it's pretty fucked up, frankly.
Yeah.
So to actually have a conversation about what it is to get older.
It's like,
Yes.
wow,
Yeah.
it is, I don't know. I think that, like we talked about in The Substance when Coralie Farge said being a woman is body horror. I think that, aging can kind of be framed in a similar way.
Yeah.
And, you're unrecognizable to yourself, or you could be at a certain point. And there is a horror in that. There is luck in that. Like I said, it's like this weird, bittersweet, like,
there's a lot.
it's a very, very interesting conversation. And we're having it with Elvis.
With Bubba Ho-Tep.
We're looking up this girl's skirt, and it's just like I just wanted to praise the writing because it's a really like nuanced way to frame it, because you could almost dismiss it as like, oh my god, you old pervert, whatever. But it's like, no, there is a nugget here at its core of like some really ripe existentialism that Bubba Ho-Tep.
And I think another part of it that isn't really explored, it is interesting to have these conversations in a film featuring a mummy.
True.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Where this creature can kind of be the physical embodiment of how some of these characters feel.
Yeah.
But as Elvis continues to stare, he notes that to Callie, it was the same to her as a house cat sneaking a peek. Though he does admit that he felt his pecker flutter once.
And we're back.
Yeah.
We're back.
Wow.
He compares it to a pigeon having a heart attack. But then it just laid back down and remained limp. Still, it's like, all right, guys.
Let's not.
Come on.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's
it's
not give
Elvis.
it too much.
We gotta remember it's Elvis.
True. He does say, though, that even a flutter in these days was kind of reassuring.
Good for him.
But after taking about 5 minutes to fish the requested items out of the basically empty garbage can, Callie turns to hand Elvis Bull's belongings, which he thanks her for.
It really was kind of giving when Skinner was tying his shoe.
Very true. But as she turns to walk away, Elvis asks if she was kin to Bull, learning that he was actually her father. Elvis notes that he's never seen her before, and Callie replies that she's only been here once when she checked Bull in. Elvis remembers that this was about 3 years ago, and when Callie asks if the two of them were friends, Elvis explains that they were just roommates, as Bull never really felt well enough to say much. But admiring Bull's Purple Heart medal, Elvis admits that he hated to see what was left of him go away so easy. He describes Bull as an all-right guy, and adds that he mentioned Callie a lot.
I thought they didn't talk.
Well,
but
you know,
that's fine.
3 years is a long time. Who knows? Callie accepts Elvis's assessment, and as she packs up her things, she even agrees that her father was all right, which prompts Elvis to reply, "But not enough so you'd come and see him, though." Ire rises in Callie's voice as she warns Elvis not to try to lay some kind of guilt trip on her, adding that she did what she could. She complains that if it hadn't been for Medicaid or Medicare or whatever that stuff was, Bull would have been in some ditch somewhere. As she continues cleaning out her father's drawers, she acknowledges that she definitely didn't have the money herself to take care of him. As Elvis closes the case on the Purple Heart, he gazes despondently out of the window as his inner voice wonders about his own daughter, lost long ago to him. If she knew about him, would she come to see him? Would she even care? Without turning to face Callie, Elvis announces, "You could have come to see him. They don't charge you for that." Callie calmly retorts for him to mind his own business, reiterating that she was just too busy.
I feel like we're trying to frame Callie in a certain way, that she kind of just like dumped her dad here and abandoned him.
Uh-huh.
But no, mind your own business. Like, you really have no idea what this dynamic was.
Yeah.
Because I was waiting on her to be like, do you know what he fucking did?
Yeah,
they don't give a medal for that or whatever. But she's just like, I was busy. And it's like, oh, so I guess Elvis
Maybe
was right.
it was,
but,
yeah.
But still, stay in your lane, Elvis.
And I understand, but at the same time, he's like, I gotta wake up to him like coughing and shit all night.
What does that mean?
Where are you?
Hey, you don't, I mean, I don't know. Family's weird, man.
It is.
It's just like,
that's true.
don't ask. Like, just leave it.
But Elvis returns his attention to Bull's things, rediscovering the picture of him in his younger days between the two smiling women, his hand outstretched in a wave and a look of joy resting on his face. Elvis sighs wearily, resting the photo against his chest. But just then, the nurse, played by Ella Joyce, enters the room with a beaming and boisterous greeting to Elvis, who she describes as her favorite patient.
Ella Joyce. I knew that I knew her face. Because I kept thinking, I was like, I know that face. I know that face. Why do I know it? Because she is in the music video of TLC's Waterfall.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
And I was like, man, I know that can't be it. She also was in Set It Off in 96 and in Rock, the TV show, ROC,
Yeah.
from 91 to 94. She was the
Wow.
mom.
Okay.
She's another character in the film that I really thought we were going to get more of.
Yes. Yeah. I wanted more.
Yeah. And they set it up later to where it seems as though she will be a part of the finale.
Right.
She just isn't.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even get a name. She's the nurse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was kind of confused because she talks.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of talking from her.
I didn't get it. And she is quite a character.
Yeah.
Yes.
But as she approaches Elvis's bedside, clutching her clipboard, she asks, "How are you this morning, Mr. Half?" Elvis answers that he's all right, but he reminds the nurse that he prefers Mr. Presley or Elvis and that he doesn't go by Sebastian Half anymore, adding that he's trying not to hide. The nurse understands, correcting her previous greeting with an exaggerated, "Good morning, Elvis." This is when I was like, what the hell?
Yeah. I thought that more was going to come into play with the whole identity thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But I think he kind of puts it to bed pretty quickly.
Yeah. And he tells you every single...
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no wiggle room. Or,
No.
Be a little more going on with that, but all right.
But the nurse chuckles to herself as she reaches for a urine sample that rests in a cup on Elvis's bedside table. And as she eyes the orange liquid with concern, she asks Callie if she knew that they had a celebrity here. Elvis Presley, you know, the rock and roll singer.
That pee was very concerning to me.
Yeah, along with how we met him.
Yeah.
But the nurse sets the sample back down, clutching Elvis's wrist for a pulse check, as she adds that Elvis is dead, which she says that Mr. Half knows. But Elvis tears his arm away from her, insistent that he's right here and that he isn't dead. Yet. The nurse levels with him, still referring to him as Mr. Half, when she states that she doesn't mind calling him Elvis, but she notes that he's a little confused and likes to play sometimes. She reminds him, "You were an Elvis impersonator, remember?" Elvis just turns away from the nurse as she continues that he fell off of the stage and broke his hip about 20 years ago. It got infected, and he went into a coma for quite a while, and he came out with a few problems. Elvis snaps back that he was actually impersonating himself, considering that he couldn't do anything else, and he denies that he has any problems at all, offended that the nurse is trying to say that his brain is messed up. Callie wonders why he would ever want to be someone else, and Elvis admits that he just got tired of it, that he was hooked on pills, and he wanted out.
I appreciate Elvis's openness with this conversation because this really is like a HIPAA violation.
Yeah. It's like, who is she?
She's like, here's his piss. He broke his hip. He thinks he's Elvis. It's like, dude, you can't do this.
It's like, it's right here in this file.
Yes.
No, take it. I
like you, but you're going to lose your job.
But as the camera presses in on him, Elvis explains that this boy, Sebastian Haff, was an Elvis impersonator, and he was the best of them, and he took Elvis's place. But the problem was, Sebastian had a bad heart, and he liked drugs too, even more than Elvis. And so, it was Sebastian who died, not Elvis. Elvis merely took Sebastian's place. But Callie's voice echoes as we crossfade to a shot of a black Cadillac off in the distance, coasting down an old country road. She asks, "Why would you want to leave all that fame, Mr. Presley? All that money?" As the car speeds by, Elvis answers that he doesn't know. It got old. We find a younger Elvis sitting pensive in the back of the vehicle, his glasses a gleaming gold and his hair as black as his suit. In the present day, Elvis continues that the woman he loved, Priscilla, was gone, and the rest of the women were just women. He says the music wasn't even his anymore. He wasn't even him anymore. Just this thing that they made up. Elvis sits surrounded in the car by his group of friends, played by Chuck Williams, Timothy E. Goodwin, James Maley, and Blaine Tyler, who Elvis claims were sucking him dry. Possibly a bit of foreshadowing there.
Oh,
Yeah.
true.
Thoughtful guitar reverberates in the score as the car passes a brightly colored sign on the side of the road, broadcasting the Nacogdoches Harvest Carnival, where Elvis says he traveled to check out this Sebastian Haff, who he had heard of before. They did point out that I guess the author, Joe R. Lansdale, who wrote this story, is from Nacogdoches.
Oh, that's
okay.
cool.
The car parks across from an inflatable bounce house, signifying this incredibly production budget-friendly carnival.
Damn.
That's all they needed.
Yeah.
I know that this is a carnival. Don't waste any more money.
That's
Yeah,
true.
no,
That's
yeah.
true.
They all step out of the vehicle, Elvis joining them last as they walk across the street in slow motion Reservoir Dogs style. The king is at their center as they climb a flight of stairs to enter the nearby building, finally reaching a red door at the end of a hall, which has a small piece of paper taped to it, which reads, "Sebastian Haff, do not disturb." The men stop, Elvis turning to the group and telling them to wait outside as he reaches for the doorknob. Beyond the door, in a bespeckled blue bodysuit, sits Sebastian Haff, Elvis Presley's impersonator, played by Bruce Campbell.
I literally had, is it going to be Bruce Campbell as well? Of course it is.
Of course. Coscarelli said, I guess, this part of the story in that short story is kind of just discussed and then they breeze past it.
Okay.
And so there were parts that he needed to extend from the story to make it feature length.
Yeah.
And he's like, one scene that we have to have is Elvis meeting Sebastian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad because I do think this film is better for it seeing all this.
Oh,
I
yeah.
agree. I did too want to mention the Elvis makeup. I had meant to earlier, but the things that Elvis was saying when we met him were a little bit distracting. But Howard Berger had said that they wanted to kind of do a less is more approach because they still wanted Bruce Campbell to be able to emote and his like expressions be seen through this makeup. But they still did give him a prosthetic chin, nose, kind of the jowl area when he's playing, you know, his older self.
Right.
And they said that he had to show up to set almost 3 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes before anybody else.
Oh, wow.
Because his application on his face took 2.5 hours.
Damn.
And that they had like a latex bodysuit to kind of pad him out when he's, the scenes where he's laying in his bed and stuff. But yeah, and it looks really good. It looks
does.
really good.
Yeah.
I will say, especially when he's wearing the glasses.
Yes.
I'm like, that's really good work. I think it's difficult because Bruce Campbell is so recognizable and Elvis is such an iconic figure.
Yeah.
Even a silhouette of Elvis, I would say as Americans, but I think everywhere, you know what the hell that is. So marrying the two of those, and you still do see Bruce Campbell, but it very much does give Elvis.
Yeah.
I think they did a really good job.
And I think there's also, like they used to say about acting, they're like, Olivier once said, let the wig do the work.
Right.
Yeah.
There is something, I think, about this makeup that does bring out so much of Elvis's mannerisms.
Yeah.
Like there are certain little tics that he'll do, like with the twitch of his upper lip or like just a look, and you're like, you are really... and that's the thing. I don't know if you're tapping into the pop culture consciousness of Elvis Presley or a very specific performance of really doing Elvis justice.
I
Whatever it was.
Whatever it is.
It worked.
It works.
It worked, but I did feel a bit of Johnny Bravo in there, but he's also after Elvis.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
There were a
can
couple
hear
of
Johnny
lines that I'm like, wow, Johnny Bravo really ripped off. But Sebastian's plastic fork saws through the remaining half of an entire blueberry pie, and he shovels a bite into his mouth as Elvis pushes the door open. Sebastian drops the fork in surprise, rising from his small table as the king crosses through the empty locker room to confront his doppelganger, the heels of his boots clicking against the tile floor. Guitar chords tremble in the score as Sebastian guffaws, collecting himself before admitting that he didn't really think that Elvis would. But before he can even finish his sentence, he drops to his knees before the king, Elvis presenting his pinky ring for the dumbstruck double to kiss.
Can you imagine, though, and I'm sure there's doubles who fucking hate the people that they double or whatever, but somebody that you presumably idolize so much that you've made a career on studying them to imitate them perfectly.
Yeah.
And they just fucking walked in the room.
I think it would be that. I prepared my whole life for this.
Yeah.
And it's really happening.
Like, this is such a wild story to come up with.
Yeah.
But a choir of voices join the score as Elvis nods, with respect properly paid to him. We crossfade back into the hallway, Elvis's boys waiting by the locker room's very red door, as Elvis, seemingly, makes his exit.
I will say kissing the rings was a bit much, though.
Yeah.
I don't think I think maybe you need to reel it in a little bit.
Well, he's like, I am the king. So.
Yeah.
Elvis, quote unquote, tells the gathered men, "It's all right, boys, just another freak," as he wipes a stain of blueberry pie from the edge of his mouth and tastes it from his thumb.
That was good.
Yeah.
We realize that it is Sebastian who stands with his new cohorts, convincingly embodying Elvis's persona as he directs them. Let's split. The crew makes their exit to their waiting car outside, Sebastian reaching for the door handle, only to be stopped by one of his friends who snaps into action with a, "Whoa, King, I got it. Sebastian takes a seat in the back of the black Cadillac, still adjusting to the nuances of his newfound life.
That's why I'm like, damn, they didn't plan shit.
No.
It's such a this is a once in a lifetime opportunity in this moment, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine because it's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, what do I do now?
And it's funny because Sebastian's like, I got a show tonight.
Yeah.
I guess you're doing it now.
Yeah.
But in the present day, Elvis explains that he signed everything over to Sebastian, except for enough money to sustain himself if things got bad. And as the Cadillac pulls away and disappears into an unfocused blur down the street, Elvis steps into frame, wearing Sebastian's clothes and silver sunglasses, offering his old friends a wave goodbye determined to make a new life for himself, a better one. Sometime later, Elvis stands at a barbecue grill just outside of a small trailer, spraying lighter fluid all over half a dozen hot dogs that rest on the grates. He explains that he and Sebastian had a deal, however, that if Elvis ever wanted to trade back, Sebastian would let him. The flames rise over the hot dogs as Elvis attempts to tamper them with a wave of his hand. But as he's called away by an uncredited man and a couple of women, played by Gigi Bannister and Emily Wingell, who sit at a table at the center of the trailer park, Elvis adds that his deal with Sebastian was all written up in a contract. The contract that he lost his copy of in a barbecue accident. So we see where the scene is going.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Elvis steps away from the grill with a smile on his face, but the camera lingers on the overturned canister of lighter fluid, which drips incessantly. As his new friends offer him a beer, Elvis admits that his life wasn't so bad, meeting new folks and enjoying himself. But just as soon as he cracks the beer open, offering a toast and taking a sip, white smoke rises behind him, and suddenly, a fiery explosion erupts from the grill, bright flames bursting again and again until his entire trailer and those surrounding it are blown to bits in the resulting fire. Elvis stands stunned as a guitar whines in the score. He does underreact, though, because he just turns and he goes, "You see that thing?"
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
He goes, "It went up just like that." It's like, yeah, dude. Everything is gone. He kicks the dirt in dismay. But as we return to the present day, the nurse scolds Elvis, warning him not to carry it too far, as he might just get way out there and not come back.
I mean, it is a tale.
It is.
That whole barbecue thing was kind of giving Final Destination to me. But in that making of, they said that they had hollowed out that trailer and filled it with explosives. And so they were just kind of waiting for it to go off. And he was like, I give Bruce Campbell full credit because he was really standing by that barbecue by the trailer. It's like, dude. But I mean, look at where he came from.
Yeah. He's like, I'm used to.
Right. Sam does worse than that.
Yeah. Oh, you're just going to explode me?
That's fine. That's fine. But to the nurse, Elvis offers a fuck you, which only causes the two women to collapse into laughter, with Elvis lamenting that when you get old, you can't even cuss someone and have it bother them, somber that everything you do is either worthless or sadly amusing. But with her father's belongings sorted through, Callie snags a black bag, announcing that she's gotten what she's wanted before telling the nurse that everything else can either go to Goodwill or the Salvation Army. The nurse accepts this, but offers her condolences for the loss of her father, noting that Bull was a nice man. And Callie appreciates this, but she turns her attention to Elvis, enunciating, "It was nice to meet you, Mr. Presley." But Elvis just tells her to get the hell out. As Callie walks toward the door, the nurse lightly scolds Elvis with a pat on his leg before telling him that she'll be back later to do that little thing that has to be done.
Oh, dear. But Callie's like, okay, I've provided a character for you to tell your backstory to. Gotta go.
Yeah.
You'll never see me again.
The women cackle as they head into the hallway together, the nurse's disbelieving voice echoing into the hall. Elvis! It's like, goddamn.
Yeah.
I can hear you, dude.
But all alone now, Elvis reopens Bull's case to once again admire his Purple Heart medal, sadly muttering to himself, "Poor Bull. In the end, does anything really matter?" We dissolve to the grounds outside of the convalescent home as Elvis's voice explains that no one here ever listened to him. Well, except for one guy. But Elvis adds that he was certifiable. Among the trees, Elvis sits in a chair next to Jack, played by Ossie Davis.
Ossie Davis. What a career.
Yeah.
So I told your sister when I was watching, I said, I know, he looks very familiar. She's like, no, yeah. Again, and this will be the third time I bring it up, he was in Grumpy Old Men in 93. Also, Do the Right Thing in 89, The Client in 94, and also the Stan TV show from 94.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
He led a really incredible life too. He was a civil rights activist.
Yeah.
And he gave the eulogy at Malcolm X's funeral and spoke a tribute at Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral at his service.
Just an unbelievable life.
An incredible life.
If I'm not mistaken, I want to say that he was about 84 or 85 years old in this film.
Get out of here.
It's just, I'm not disparaging this film, but thinking of the story that's being told and the budget, he is such an unbelievable get.
Yeah.
It's astounding that he is here and fucking not phoning it in. He is present.
No. Yeah, in 84, I wouldn't believe that.
No.
I had read that, I guess, Coscarelli, he was the only person that he wanted to play this part.
Okay.
And so he sends a script that kind of never gets to him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only through Coscarelli's friend, Mick Garris, who directed Ossie Davis in the miniseries of The Stand,
Yeah.
that he's finally able to make this connection. But the agent of Ossie Davis was like, basically, I hate this script, but my client likes it, so sure.
I love that everybody's agents were like, don't.
No.
Do not fucking do this.
But Jack points behind his ear as Elvis moves the collar of Jack's beige cardigan to get a closer look, Jack explaining that that's where they took a piece of his brain. He says they got it back in D.C. in a goddamn jar. Jack laments that he has a little bag of sand up there now. Elvis chooses his words carefully, meaning no offense, as he reminds Jack that President Kennedy was a white man. But Jack counters that that's how clever they are. They dyed him this color all over. He asks Elvis if he can think of a better way to try to hide the truth than that. Elvis just sits speechless with a flick of his eyebrows, but he doesn't discount the possibility. Reneé and I have delved into a lot of conspiracy theories regarding JFK. This is a brand new one.
I was gonna say I'm always clocked in for a good JFK conspiracy. I was surprised that this was the kind of angle with this character.
Yeah,
that that's
it was
what they're
interesting.
doing. Yeah. I also think that Elvis is the last one that should be willing to discredit any odd identity situation.
Yeah.
True.
But at this point, I'm like, are we not going to talk about that horrifying man that burst forth when that scarab was attacking that woman?
No, we're still meeting the characters, apparently.
We're having flashbacks, conspiracy theories. We're introducing new characters. I want to. What was happening there?
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
See, this is where the pacing starts to get a little strange. But that night, with the glow of interior lights cast through the windows and into the evening, the chirping of crickets and eerie strings in the score surround us as we glide toward the front door of Shady Rest. We quickly cut to the foot of Elvis's bed, spying him through the railing as he rests beneath his covers, quick flashes of his dreams soon overtaking us as we're transported into his subconscious, a lively rock and roll track kicking into gear as he speeds down the open road in a burgundy Cadillac convertible. The sunlight cast over him as he coasts across the two-lane blacktop. Elvis's voice narrates that he was living simple, the way Sebastian Haff had been, going from town to town, doing the Elvis act. Only he felt like he was really him again. He checks the time on a watch strapped to the driver's side visor as he speeds down the street, a memory of his conversation with the nurse and Callie floating above the landscape as he asks them if they can dig it. The nurse grins. "We're digging it, Mr. Haff, Mr. Presley." So this never happened.
Yeah.
He's like, man, it would have been cool if they accepted that story. But the nurse's voice echoes as the scene gives way to a towering Shure 55 microphone resting atop a stand, its silver shimmering in the stage lights as it is soon surrounded not only by smoke, but by a gathered crowd. Elvis parts the curtains, taking the stage as Sebastian Haff, his drummer, played by Steve Cassell, providing the proper fill for the would-be king to strike a signature pose for his adoring audience. As the full band kicks into gear, including the guitarist, played by Damon Carusco, the bassist, played by Leif Frederick, and the keyboard player, played by Danny Crossan, we zero in on a placard plastered to the bass drum, which reads, Sebastian Haff, a tribute to the king. The crowd goes wild for the seeming impersonator before them, who continues posing as cameras flash all around him, Elvis grabbing the microphone stand, but never actually singing a single note because it is far too expensive for this production. But Elvis explains that women would throw themselves at him because they could imagine that he was Elvis. Only he was Elvis, playing Sebastian Haff, playing Elvis. He's a dude playing a dude disguised.
That's another dude.
But as he kneels in the stage lights, tearing a scarf from his neck and tossing it into the crowd, he admits that it was all pretty good and that he didn't really mind the contract being burned up. He says that he didn't even try to go back to convince anybody, which is pretty wild.
Yeah. Well, he was done, I think.
Fair. But he says that this is when he had the accident. We watch as Elvis gives the crowd the old razzle-dazzle, gyrating, taking care of business, as he says, and that is when his hip goes out. Elvis throws a high kick, more of a mid-kick.
Yeah.
And we hear a snap. He winces in pain, losing his balance as he tumbles off of the stage, landing in a thud on the ground as the music surrounding him screeches to a stop. Where was the crowd?
It's funny.
For that?
It's funny that you say that because they said that they had 100 extras to be in the crowd for the scene.
Uh-huh.
And it took them so long to get it done that they were literally just leaving. They were getting bored and leaving.
Good
and
Lord.
so by the end of everything, only 10 or 15 people were still there.
So no one to catch him.
So
Yeah.
maybe literally.
Yeah.
But Elvis awakens in his bed in the middle of the night, the dream of his memory dissipating as he glances around his room through half-opened eyes. He switches on the lamp at his bedside table before snagging his sunglasses from atop a very familiar-looking chocolate tin that Callie left for him from Bill's belongings. As he places them onto his face, he laments how cold it is in his room tonight. But with great effort, he reaches beneath his bed to retrieve his bedpan, and before he uses it, he suddenly summons his strength to make it to the bathroom on his own instead. He rolls out of the bed, reaching for his walker, and before making his way to the bathroom, he switches on a nearby electrical heater, its coils humming and glowing as it comes to life. Well, we spy Elvis through the bathroom door, reaching the end of his bathroom break. But before he can exit the bathroom, he hears something clatter inside of the bedroom. He glances outward toward the window, where the curtains flow in the breeze, but it isn't until he makes his way back toward the bed that he notices the cause of the commotion. Bull's tin has been knocked from his nightstand and onto the floor, every single piece of chocolate collected in a pile next to the container. He inches his way over, his hand slowly outstretched toward the overturned tin, and when he lifts it, he discovers, to his horror, a massive scarab beetle. It looks up at him, chittering, as Elvis assumes it to be one big bitch cockroach.
I'm like, why does everybody think these are cockroaches?
I know.
This place-
They're not fucking
Yeah,
cockroaches.
no, not at all.
As he leans in for a closer look, the beetle launches upward, the king clattering to the floor to dodge it, his walker tipping just out of reach and his glasses sliding off of his face and across the floor. Elvis pants fearfully on the ground, catching his breath as he retrieves his glasses and uses his walker to pull himself upright. When he reaches his feet again, he finds the bug climbing his bedroom wall, its head emerging from between its sharp pinchers. Accompanied by pounding and plodding rock music in the score, Elvis strikes a karate pose, offering, "All right, man, let's go." His Elvis is so good.
It's really
It
good.
is.
He whacks at his bad hip with a firm palm before reaching backward to the utensils on his discarded dinner tray. And instead of retrieving anything worthwhile, his blind hand returns, brandishing a spoon. But just as he drops it to the floor, disappointed, the bug answers his previous call to action, its back spreading open to reveal a thin pair of wings, and with a shriek, it dive bombs the king. He dodges it as it continues its descent from different angles, narrowly missing him each time. But as it flies forward, hovering just before Elvis's face, he attempts to distract it with his left hand, only to swat for it with his right, missing just barely. But just as the bug makes one more attempt, Elvis snags his bedpan, catching the bug inside of its seat and pinning it to the wall. He whispers, "Got you, you six-legged bastard." But when he doesn't hear any movement from the other side of the bedpan, Elvis removes it from the wall, glancing around the room to make sure that it didn't get away. But unbeknownst to him, the beetle lies in wait on the opposite side of the bedpan, and as soon as Elvis turns it around, it springs forward at him. Elvis jumps backwards, knocking over his walker, his dinner tray, and the heater in one clumsy collapse. The creature then skitters across the tiles for him, but before it can reach him, Elvis snags a carving fork from his toppled tray and stabs right through the bug, twisting it around before raising it twitching right in front of his face. He declares, "Even a big bitch cockroach like you should know, never, but never fuck with the king."
We're still thinking this is a cockroach.
Yeah.
But I feel like this fight has gone on for an an extremely long time, and no one has come to check on him.
No,
Yeah.
he's fucking shouting shit at it.
Yeah, he knocked over his tray.
Uh-huh.
Hit that fucking beetle hiding in the
That's
bedpan was
ridiculous.
hilarious.
I don't know what inspired him to be like, I need to make sure.
Yeah.
You got
He's
it.
gaslighting himself.
They did mention on one of those interviews, Coscarelli said that this kind of like slapstick situation
Yeah.
was a nod to Evil Dead 2. And he said, I expect fans of Bruce Campbell coming to see this film are expecting something like this.
Oh, no, yeah.
I can totally see that.
There's even a shot, I think, right when we came in that was very similar to an Evil Dead shot when we're going in the cabin.
Right.
The slapstick in this, I appreciate the fuck out of it because it is very Evil Dead 2.
And Bruce Campbell just shines.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But Elvis stabs the bug into the bright coils of the heater, partially electrocuting himself as the beetle dies a vibrant and fiery death. After Elvis blows at the flickering flame covering the creature's corpse, he tosses on his robe and exits into the hallway on his walker. He calls out into the empty hall for anyone to answer, proclaiming, "I think we got some major bug problems in here, man." But the only answer is an echoing whisper carried on a ghastly gust of wind. The king hustles his way down the empty hall and finds himself standing in the doorway of Jack's room. In a series of quick cuts and sounds of gunfire, we spy framed photographs of Jackie Kennedy, as well as a series of random mugshots of a few folks I didn't recognize, but I learned were apparently allegedly tied to JFK's assassination.
Oh.
But Elvis enters the room, and we get a shot of Jack Ruby's mugshot from November 24th, 1963. We then cut jarringly to a model of the motorcade speeding past Dealey Plaza, along with a miniature of the schoolbook depository overlooking this site, where Lee Harvey Oswald lies in wait with a rifle in hand.
I was like, is this my room? What is going on?
You're like, I would like to say they borrowed my diorama.
Did not receive proper credit.
But after an intercut shot of Oswald's mugshot, Elvis finally discovers Jack lying face down on the floor. He calls out to him, marching his way over to kneel at his side as Jack lies unresponsive. But as he reaches for the collar of Jack's suit jacket, Elvis discovers a scar on the back of Jack's neck, just behind his ear.
Interesting.
He attempts for a moment to make heads or tails of it, but instead of reaching a conclusion, Elvis just lets out a sigh, calling out, "Mr. Kennedy?" Jack finally stirs awake, rolled over by Elvis, who lets him know that he found him on the floor. Jack answers, "No shit," and he asks Elvis who he is. Elvis stutters that he's Sebastian Half. I was like, what?
Yeah.
And that's never really...
No.
But rather than pay this any mind, Jack asks lowly, "Did you see him go by in the hall?" He rises up, adding that he scuttled like... But Elvis doesn't know who he's talking about. Jack then tries to tell him that it was the one they sent for him, but Elvis has no idea what he's talking about. He helps him up, Jack suggesting that it must have been Lyndon Johnson, or maybe Castro, who sent someone to finish him off, wondering if it could have actually just been Johnson himself.
God damn.
He emphasizes that he was ugly, real goddamn ugly. Elvis breaks the news to Jack that President Johnson is dead, but Jack doubts that that would stop him. Suddenly, though, a low moan emanates from the hall, interrupting their conversation. The camera presses in through the open door and into the hallway. But we abruptly cut from that to Jack being helped back into bed in his well-lit room by a couple of nurses. His room is massive, firstly.
Yes!
And this blue carpet, I don't know if they were trying to make a reference to the Oval Office to kind of hint more and more at his presidential...
Oh.
Yeah.
But it is very different.
Yeah, I did notice it right away, and I was like, oh, his carpet's a nice blue.
Yeah. I was just like, why is his room so much nicer than everybody else?
Yeah.
And he's not sharing
bigger.
a room.
No.
But Elvis stands idly by as he's approached by the rest home administrator, played by Reggie Bannister.
Reggie Bannister. He's got a credit for... I don't know how many of these Phantasm movies they are, but the first one is from 1979, and the one that I found, Phantasm Return, is from 2016.
Oh.
Holy shit.
And there's movies all in between. So there's a lot.
We need to get into this franchise.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. He also has a credit on Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 from 1990.
4.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Sweet little baby.
But the administrator dissects Elvis's story. "You say you heard a couple of noises?" Elvis confirms this, describing it as a scuttling sound that he followed out into the hall. The administrator repeats, "Scuttling sound," before asking condescendingly if Elvis was awake or in bed when he heard that noise. Elvis explains that he was in bed and then he was awake, before adding that the bugs woke him up, declaring that they got bugs all over this place. The administrator leans in inquisitively, wondering, "What kind of bugs have you been seeing, Mr. Half?" Elvis asks if he looks like an ichthyologist, just recounting that it was a bug the size of his fist, the size of a peanut butter and banana sandwich.
Come on. Come on.
I know.
He's Elvis. You know? And an ichthyologist, I think that's study of fish. So,
I think it's entomologist like Grissom from CSI.
there you go. You're like, I know this.
I know that one.
But Elvis just shrugs the whole thing off, noting, "What do I care? I got a growth on my pecker." It's like, was that even scripted? Because it's just a reminder.
Yeah, and I get it, but saying shit like that is going to make us not believe you.
Right.
Yes, you're losing credibility.
Yeah.
The administrator just gently tells Mr. Half not to worry and that they'll call an exterminator tomorrow to take care of it. Elvis characteristically retorts, "Thank you. Thank you very much."
There are some moments, and again, we've all said how great he does as Elvis, but there are some moments where it's like, okay, like you had to get that in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're laying it on a little thick.
Yeah.
But the following morning, we dip down through the sunlit trees to settle peacefully on the exterior of Shady Rest, but we're promptly snapped out of this serenity by the nurse, who stands at Elvis's bedside, putting on a pair of latex gloves. She warns Elvis that it's time for that little thing again, and Elvis, who rests in bed with his knees bent, allows the nurse to pull his blankets downward. She reaches for a tub of ointment on his nightstand, scooping her fingers into it and spreading it across her gloved palms. She then steels herself before reaching between Elvis's legs. And she's really going after it.
She was. I'm like, is this really the procedure?
Well, she's got to apply it. Like, it's got to get everywhere.
And everywhere, like, we learned that it doesn't take when this is done later, it doesn't take that long.
No.
But Elvis's voiceover laments, "A doll like that, handling me without warmth or emotion." He suggests that just 20 years ago, he could have made with the curly lip smile and had her eating out of his asshole. Bit coarse, but maybe.
We get the point.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing?
Oh,
okay.
But as the nurse continues her work, she shares that the doctor says that this cream ought to do the trick, explaining that they're corticosteroids. She suggests that it should heal the inflammation and stop the pus, too. As she applies it slickly, Elvis's narration wonders where his youth went and why fame didn't hold off old age and death. And why did he leave fame in the first place? Does he want it back? Could he have it back? And if he could, would it make any damn difference? In quick flashes, Elvis recalls his battle with the beetle the night previous. Discovering Jack on the floor of his bedroom, his conversation with the administrator, and peeking up Callie's skirt. It's been a pretty busy 24 hours.
Yeah. That was my exact. It's been through a lot.
Yeah.
A sly smile slowly stretches across his face as the nurse pulls her hand back from beneath the blankets. Her eyes wide, she scolds, "Mr. Half!" Elvis then comes back to himself, puzzled, but he follows the nurse's eyes down to his nether regions, where his inner voice can only intone, "Lord Almighty," as the nurse admonishes him as an old rascal. Elvis gleams a grin, with the nurse suggesting that he better take a cold shower. His inner monologue recounts that it's been at least 2 presidential elections since he's had a boner like this one, and after a moment, he realizes what happened. He was thinking about something that interested him. Not his next meal or going to the crapper. He'd been given a dose of life again.
I appreciated the clarification because I was like, that's what does it for you, dude? Like a bunch of disjointed.
Yeah. Fighting a beetle is, it turns out.
Really revs the engine. But yeah, I'm like, okay. Like he feels like he's living again instead of just existing.
Right.
But I was like, this poor nurse just trying to do her job.
The nurse looks him up and down with judgment in her eyes. But Elvis offers, "You get in there with me, and I'll take that shower."
All right, now you're doing too much.
The nurse seems pleasantly taken aback by the proposal, and when Elvis suggests that she can pull on it a little, she just smirks that he ought to be ashamed of himself.
And he ought to.
Yeah.
It's like, and another thing. It's like, Elvis!
Enough.
After she exits the room, Elvis takes one more peek beneath the blankets, pleased at what he sees, and puts his hands behind his head as if to say, "Still got it." But sometime later, Elvis sits in a crowded cafeteria. An uncredited elderly woman sat at an organ in the corner, giving the room some ambience as she tickles the keys. But after peering down at his lackluster lunch, Elvis glances around the room and at the adjacent table. Gathered around him are the credited lunchroom folks, played by Joseph C. Boulder, Virginia Brown, Celia Gill, Harvey Flammer, Sylvia Flammer, Ruth Hansen, and Mary Rose Waken. At their center sits Kimo Sabe, played by Larry Pinnell, who's dressed in a full cowboy costume, complete with a 10-gallon hat, a mask like the Lone Ranger, and 2 silver pistols clenched in his fist.
I did find it interesting now, the Lone Ranger, Kennedy, Elvis. I'm like, what time period is this? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, this like resurgence of like icon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Kimo Sabe announces, "It's an ambush," as he brandishes his toy weapons. He notes that he saw them under the bridge, and we get a quick shot of a bridge extended over still water. He reiterates, "It's an ambush," and he calls out, "Tonto! My boots, Tonto!" Elvis's voiceover introduces Kemosabe, explaining that they used to play cards together, but now he doesn't even know who he is. Elvis snags a piece of cutlery from his tray, a 2-pronged fork, which reminds him of the night previous, his desperate stab through the body of the beetle. But when he looks up from his tray, the fog of memory is cleared from his mind as his eyes meet Jack's, who stares at him from across the table. The elderly men nod at each other before returning to their lunches. But that night, Elvis finds himself restless in bed, stirring awake from a nightmare. But he takes notice of a pair of heels which click their way across the tiles in the hallway. He glances through the dark to discover a silhouette of a woman darkening his doorway. Her voice echoes, "Daddy?" And as Elvis stares confused, calling out in return, "Baby?" We see in quick flashes the figure glitching out, disappearing, only to be replaced by Jack, who appears at his bedside, shaking Elvis's shoulder and startling the shit out of him. So is that meant to be Lisa Marie?
I guess.
I don't know.
Because it is this thing that's kind of hanging over Elvis this entire film.
Yeah.
And it is interesting he never mentions her name at all.
Yeah, I did notice that too.
Maybe Lisa Marie was like, we're not.
Yeah. No thanks.
But Jack shouts for Elvis's attention, calling him Sebastian as he reveals, "It's loose." Elvis wonders what he's talking about, and Jack can only answer, "It," before directing him to listen. The men then go silent, but an eerie wind blows through the empty hall, carrying cryptic whispers as the dragging sound of slow footsteps creep distantly. Jack admits that he was wrong when he thought it was Lyndon Johnson, but after coming across new evidence, he's been forced to believe that it is actually another assassin who is after another target tonight. He urges Elvis to follow him so that he can show him something, noting that he doesn't think it's safe for him to go back to sleep. Annoyed, Elvis just collapses back into his bed, suggesting for Jack to go tell the administrators what's going on then. But Jack switches on Elvis's bedside table, announcing, "Suits and white starches? No thank you." He reminds Elvis that he trusted them when he was back in Dallas, and look where that got him in his brain.
Listen, I get it, dude.
Yeah.
That was a double cross.
We got to focus up.
He laments that he's thinking with sand here now. And though he picks up some waves, maybe, from his brain, someday somebody might just disconnect the battery at the White House. You had me in the first half. And then I think the more you say, the less I'm like, oh, maybe it's
We're
not.
venturing a little far out.
But Elvis agrees sarcastically that that's definitely something to worry about. But having exhausted all other tactics, Jack levels with the king, revealing, "Listen, I know you're Elvis." And this grabs his attention, Elvis rising from his blankets as Jack suggests that there was another rumor that he heard, that Elvis hated him. But he's thought about it, and if Elvis really hated him, he could have finished him off the other night. But Jack states that all he wants from him is to look him straight in the eye and assure him that he had nothing to do with that day in Dallas and that he didn't know about Lee Harvey Oswald or Jack Ruby.
Well, that's easy.
Yeah.
This I can promise.
Yeah.
Elvis's eyes search aimlessly as he sighs and sits up properly to face Jack, offering, "Now look, man, I had nothing to do with Dallas, and I knew neither Lee Harvey Oswald nor Jack Ruby." Jack smiles. Good. Before asking if he can call him Elvis instead of Sebastian, and Elvis allows this. Jack then asks if he wears glasses to read, and Elvis elaborates that he wears glasses when he really wants to see. Fair.
Right.
Jack just suggests that he grab them and follow him into the hall, and Elvis obliges. He follows behind Jack in the hallway on his walker, noting in voiceover that he wasn't even sure that he needed the walker anymore. But one thing was for sure, and that's that Jack was a nut. And maybe he was nuts too, but there was an adventure going on. Jack leads Elvis into a public restroom, creaking open the nearest stall door for him to take a look inside. On the right wall, Elvis discovers graffiti etched elaborately into it, but comes away from it unimpressed. He reminds Jack that they're investigating a scuttling in the hall, trying to figure out who attacked him the night before, and he brings him in here to look at stick pictures on the shithouse wall?
Really?
Yeah.
It's like, take one more look at that real quick.
Please. Because that is not what I see.
Yeah.
Jack just insists that Elvis look a little closer, and when he does, tracing the etchings with his fingers, he realizes it's Egyptian. Jack confirms this, commenting that it turns out that Elvis isn't as stupid as some folks made him out to be. Elvis thanks him sarcastically, but Jack goes on to explain that he copied the graffiti down onto a sheet of paper when he came in here yesterday, and he took it back to his room to research it in his books. In doing this, Jack was able to come up with a rough translation. He points to the top line of the hieroglyphics, understanding it to mean, Pharaoh gobbles donkey goobers, and the bottom line translates to, Cleopatra does the nasty.
Come on, man.
Yeah, this is...
Yeah, I think we need a better translator. I don't know.
I think we need a better
Or a
villain.
more mature, a more mature villain.
Yes,
maybe.
When Elvis responds incredulously to this, Jack just reiterates that it was the best he could do. Elvis takes this to mean that one of the nuts in this place, present company excluded, thinks he's Tutankhamun, comes into the bathroom, and writes hieroglyphics on the wall. He fails to see the connection that Jack is trying to make here, and Jack admits that he isn't sure what the connection is exactly, but that thing caught him asleep last night, and he came awake just in time. He then shares a detail that was quite surprising to me. That this thing had Jack on the floor with his mouth over Jack's asshole. That line delivery is fantastic.
It is.
And wild.
It is very shocking.
Elvis posits a shit eater? But Jack doesn't think so. He thinks that this thing was after his soul, which he claims that you can get out of any major orifice on a person's body. He's read about it.
Well, but the mouth is there too.
Yeah. Well, you said any.
But yeah, I just feel like the mouth is easier to get to.
Well,
No?
yeah. I mean, there's ears. There's
True. You know, preferences are everything.
Yeah.
None of my business what this mummy's into. Elvis wonders where he heard that. Hustler? But Jack corrects him. The Everyday Man or Woman's Book of the Soul by David Webb. He adds that they have some pretty good reviews about stolen soul movies in the back, and he offers to show Elvis, leading him out of the bathroom. It's like, are we going to look into the mummy thing, or you want me to read these letterbox reviews?
He's excited. He's distracted.
I will be honest, though. I know he keeps like, I'm not crazy.
Uh-huh.
But this man says he believes you're Elvis. I know what he's saying, about being Kennedy and all that. But again, if you want people to believe you, this dude's also not acting a certain kind of way.
No,
he is being normal. He's talking to you right. I believe you're Elvis. I believe you're Kennedy. It's like, what?
I'm here to listen to what you have to say.
Yeah,
Right.
Let's just go with it, man.
And, I mean, the night before, you did see that scar on the back of his ear.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm not saying, I don't know.
Not saying one way or the other.
Yeah.
But outside on the back porch, the nurse strikes a match to light her cigarette and take a puff of it, the chirping crickets and a hooting owl her only company in the evening. But suddenly, a pained moan and an electrical buzz capture her attention, the strange sounds guiding her down the steps and toward the exterior of a nearby shed, where through the windows and the crack in the door jamb, blue light zaps brightly into the night. The nurse stands bewildered, her cigarette smoke wafting around her puzzled stare. But when she turns to walk away, she bumps right into the administrator, who startles the shit out of her. And when she collects herself, she alerts him to what she assumes is some kind of electrical problem in the gardener's shed. The administrator just replies that this whole damn place is falling apart. But he assures her that she doesn't have to think about that, as inside the residence, Mrs. Bittelstein is currently waiting on her enema. The nurse concedes reluctantly, but on the condition that she can finish her cigarette first. And after the administrator steps away to allow this, something spies the nurse through the crack in the shed door, its vision warped and surrounded by strange whispers.
I'm immediately worried for the nurse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously. But I'm like, you said someone inside is waiting for an enema. So in my mind, I'm like, are we getting a scene where a lady is like presenting her butthole for a medical procedure, but maybe a mummy might take advantage of the situation? Like, you were just talking about sucking souls out of assholes, and then you talk about enemas, and I'm not supposed to put that together?
No, you're absolutely supposed to put that together.
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
No.
I expected this night to end that way.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you get the hearse drivers with their antics in the morning.
Yes.
All right.
And it's just like, no, she needs help.
Yeah.
Go tend to that one.
But the nurse just continues smoking, shaking her head as the cigarette burns to its filter, and she stomps it out on the ground, walking back toward the porch. But as soon as she's out of sight, the gardener's shed door creaks open, and in the flashes of light, we watch a pair of cowboy boots creep forward, stepping over the body of a resident, which lies prone on the floorboards of the shed. So he's already eaten, maybe. That's why.
Yeah. He's like, I'm good for tonight.
See, I thought here, I was like, oh, he's going to go and try to attack the nurse.
Yeah.
I did too.
And what we learn, I really thought we were setting up for the nurse to be in peril towards the end of the film.
Yeah.
Because it would make a lot more sense. It would make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But back inside Shady Rest, Elvis sits with Jack in his room, perusing the book that the former president told him about, specifically Chapter 7, The Soul Sucker. His eyes trace the drawings of creatures and ghouls visiting unsuspecting victims in the night, tearing at their clothes and devouring their souls. Jack prepares a cup of tea for each of them, as all Elvis can muster from his research is damn. But Elvis calls out to Jack, reading that it says here that you can bury some dude, and if he gets the right Tana leaves and spells said over him and such bullshit, that he can come back to life thousands of years later. But to stay alive, it says that he has to suck on the souls of the living, but if the souls are small, his life force doesn't last long. But when he stops, puzzled at what small could mean in this context, Jack just urges Elvis to continue reading, before just suggesting that he'll tell him instead. Handing Elvis a cup of tea, he politely offers Elvis a ding-dong. And when Elvis sits silent for a moment, Jack assures him that he doesn't mean his, he means a chocolate ding-dong. Well, I mean, his would be, considering that he's been dyed, but Elvis just breezes past this whole thing.
I'm like, I didn't think that's what you meant. Like, we really didn't need this whole little sidebar.
But Elvis is simply interested in the prospect of a sweet treat for dessert. Jack adds that he also has paydays and a box of Baby Ruths. Elvis rejoices as Jack slides a drawer open, which is filled to the brim with a variety of candies, and he asks Elvis which he would prefer before announcing excitedly, "Let's get decadent."
Dan, that fool has a snack drawer?
Yeah, I'm like, he's living large in here.
Yeah.
In his nice ass room with the full fucking snack bar of
Blue carpet?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and those were
Yeah.
king-sized
Yeah.
candies.
They were. This isn't fun size.
No.
We're
No.
old men. We can do that.
Whatever we want.
But I thought, and just seeing them bond.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
it
thought
is
it was-
cute.
yeah.
Yeah.
Elvis goes for a Baby Ruth, which Jack copies, snagging one for each of them before taking a seat at the edge of his bed with Elvis. As Elvis tears the wrapping open, Jack returns to the task at hand. Small souls, he says, are those that don't have much fire for life. He inquires if Elvis knows a place like that, and Elvis concurs that if souls are fires, they couldn't burn much lower than in here.
That's sad.
Yeah.
But to me, that's where I was like, oh, so eventually this mummy's going to get tired of going for these souls.
Yeah.
And then he'll go after the younger nurse.
Right.
Okay.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah, nah.
But Jack agrees, commenting that what they have here at Shady Rest is an Egyptian soul sucker of some sort. A mummy hiding out, coming in here and feeding on the sleeping. He calls its operation perfect, considering that they're small souls that can't provide him much, but if he comes back 2 or 3 times in a row and wraps his lips around some elder's asshole, that elder is going to die pretty soon, and who would be the wiser?
My note is just this movie is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
But elsewhere in the facility, Kimosabe rests in his bed in the blue stillness of the evening, when suddenly his roommate is taken to the ground right in front of him. The assailant turns to face the elderly man, with his hair in tatters, his face skeletal, and a withered snarl on his lips. Kimosabe reaches instinctively for his 2 silver pistols, which he spins before aiming them at the creature, sneering, "Asshole!" before he pulls the triggers incessantly, to no result other than a small popping sound.
Man.
Yeah.
But back in Jack's bedroom, he explains that a mummy can't be getting too much energy from all of this, not like with big souls, but he suggests that the prey here is easy. Elvis just chews his candy as he rests on his walker, realizing that with new people coming in here all the time, the mummy could keep things up forever, this soul robbing. Jack concurs, noting that that's what they were brought here for in the first place, to get them out of the way until they die, and those who don't die first from disease or just plain being old, the mummy gets. I understand what Jack is saying, but framing it that way almost sounds like the staff is in on it too.
Yeah.
That's true.
Elvis accepts this as all well and good, but he admits that there's one thing that still throws him. Rising to his feet and pacing the room in his walker, Elvis asks how an ancient Egyptian winds up in some East Texas rest home, and why is he writing on the shithouse walls?
I think that's the that's the biggest
It's
question
that. Yeah.
Jack supposes he must have gone in there to take a crap, and then he got bored and started writing on the walls, suggesting that he probably wrote on pyramid walls years ago. There's a lot of assumption going on.
So many.
But Elvis wonders what the mummy would even crap. It's not like he's eating anything. But Jack reminds him that he's eating souls, so we can only assume that he's in there crapping soul residue. He elaborates that if you die from the mummy's mouth, you wouldn't go to the other side like other souls do. He would digest these souls until they don't exist anymore. Elvis sums it up. And then you're just so much toilet water decoration. Jack concurs, but he says, speaking of toilets, that's how he figured this whole thing out. He steps away to use the restroom in his residence, and as he begins to urinate, he posits that this mummy is just like anyone else. He wants a nice clean place with a flush, which is something that they didn't have in ancient Egypt.
I will say, I think that this is an interesting way to up the stakes, where it's like, yeah, he doesn't just get you for now. Like, your soul is gone. Mm-hmm. You don't go on.
Yeah.
Your soul has been digested and shit out. So it was like, it's an interesting way to up the stakes from, it's not even just like earthly. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, you can't go on to wherever we go on.
See, I thought right here, I was like, maybe it's the scarabs or whatever.
Yeah, where do they play a part?
Because I don't understand what they have to do with anything. I mean, besides, the mummy thing, but...
Well, the kind of Evil Dead-ish scene of him fighting it, but...
Distraction?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Kind of it.
And what's their fascination with candy? Because I thought that would lead to Jack's candy drawer.
I did too. Yeah, but no.
Beatles love it.
Yeah. Apparently not.
I guess not. But suddenly, eerie whispers pervade the area through Jack's wide open door. I don't know why this is open.
Yeah.
Everything we're talking about.
Speaking at full volume.
But Elvis takes notice of it, inching his way toward the sound on his walker. This is when Jack returns to the room without washing his hands, urging Elvis not to go out into the hall. Elvis assures him that it's all right, considering that he isn't asleep, but Jack warns that doesn't mean that the mummy won't hurt him. Elvis just scoffs at this notion, and despite everything that we've just heard and learned, he snarks, There ain't no mummy from Egypt.
He was really just there for the candy. I think.
Yeah.
Baby Ruth, you've said. He then creeps toward the door cautiously, Jack backing away deeper into his room with a sarcastic, "Nice knowing you, Elvis." As he cowers by the window, he grabs his cane for self-defense, clutching it closely. But Elvis continues onward toward the door, the whispers growing louder as he finally reaches the hall, peeking his head through the door to peer down the long, dark corridor. And there, off in the distance, a figure stands, staring directly at him. As it begins inching its way forward, step by step, the surrounding lights begin to flicker around him, a long light tube overhead shorting out and shooting sparks around him to Elvis's surprise. The king shields himself as the figure continues creeping forward, a light like a swirling haze cast behind him as electricity zaps and the golden lamps that line the walls dim darkly. Elvis cowers back into the room as the mummy creeps closer, right past the doorway of Jack's room, only to stop and turn his head in Elvis's direction, making eye contact with him. I love the shot of him creeping.
Yeah.
That was really cool. I don't know why it put me in the mind of something that could have been maybe in Creepshow or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Or maybe it's that Tales from the Dark Side with the mummy that I'm just thinking.
Either way.
All right.
What it made me think of was because I really enjoyed the light spinning with the slits of light.
Yes.
It made me think of Freddy. When
Okay.
the light's behind him and his arms are stretched out and
Yeah.
the light's kind of broken up in pieces.
Yeah.
I was like, that looks really cool.
I've been, for as much has been going on when they're talking about, sucking souls out of buttholes and stuff,
Yeah.
to get a visual like that, you're like, all right.
Yeah. It's like, all right.
But the score pulses as flashes and visions fill Elvis's mind, and we press in on his eye through his shades. We see pyramids, blue sky, Egyptian iconography and landmarks, a beautiful queen in traditional dress, the Eye of Horus, and a large tomb crammed in the back of a bus marked Fragile, Cairo. Within an Egyptian temple, we watch as a man is approached by two topless women, but we cut abruptly to the same man being held down on a table by two large guards, played by Naveed Mahboubian and Omid Naimi, who jam a sharp instrument into his nose, removing a section of his brain. One of the women holds a large scarab beetle upward in reverence as the brain matter is collected into a small vase at the side of the slab where the man is held down. But through the windshield of the bus carrying this cryptic cargo, we see signs before us in the night, warning that the bridge is out, only for us to plow right through these signs. These shots are intercut with the sight of a sunlit bridge, the same that we saw when Kimosabe warned of an ambush in the lunchroom and fired his plastic guns. But now, Elvis just gazes forward in frozen horror at the mummy who stands before him in the hall, the figure turning his head to once again face forward and continue on his path through the corridor, his boots clicking against the tiles as the lights flicker around him.
So all skepticism is gone now, right?
I would hope
Yeah.
so.
I mean, I feel like he laid everything out pretty plainly. We saw the series of events.
Right.
He's like, this was my life.
Yeah. All the way up to now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is weird. Why did he do that?
I don't know, and I don't know why Elvis was able to see it.
He's an open book, man.
All right.
He's the king? I don't know. I
He's
mean,
like,
yeah.
from Pharaoh to Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Pharaoh to king. I don't know. Maybe.
It's weird.
Yeah. I did see on the making of featurette, there was a really cool thing as far as using locations to fit your budget.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of this stuff, the Egyptian pyramid, the what appeared to be like a giant tomb,
Mm-hmm.
it's literally a water park just outside of Los Angeles with an Egyptian theme.
Oh, wow. That's really
Yeah.
And so they just filmed there and it works.
It
cool.
worked.
Yeah.
But Jack joins Elvis in the hall, and they watch as the creature creeps forward to the end of the hallway into a haze of twisting light. But from behind them, Kimosabe takes his last stand against the monster, firing his pistols dryly in its direction as he curses, "Asshole! asshole. But suddenly, a pain in his chest overtakes him, and he desperately clutches his heart as he collapses to the floor. As he lies there motionless, Elvis and Jack return their attention to the mummy, who seems to disappear as he reaches the end of the hall, evaporating in an unearthly exhale as the lights in the hall return to proper and working order. But as somber acoustic guitar strums in the score, a pair of nurses and the rest home administrator discover Kimosabe on the ground, the nurses attempting CPR to no avail as Elvis and Jack exchange a look of solemnity. The king's voiceover explains that Kimosabe was dead of a ruptured heart before he hit the floor, gone down and out with both guns blazing, but his soul still intact. After his mask is removed by one of the nurses, we watch in slow motion as Elvis and Jack are reprimanded and interrogated by the staff, who demand to know what happened to Kimosabe. Elvis admitting that neither of them told the truth because, after all, who was going to believe a couple of nuts? Elvis and John F. Kennedy explaining that Kimosabe was gunning for a mummy in cowboy duds? Some kind of Bubba Ho-Tep?
Roll credits. But no, you can't tell the truth. You definitely can't tell the truth. Also, I felt some type of way because they took his mask off, pronounced him dead, and then just threw it back on his body.
Thank you, because that's my question. Was why did you throw it back on him?
That was really mean.
Like, we don't need
fuck.
that.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell? But again, why are they in trouble?
Because they were there?
But
yeah.
They're like, you're getting in the way of that mummy eating asses.
Oh, so they are in.
Yeah, I told you.
They're part of it. Shit.
Eating asses.
I didn't want to say it, but that's what's happening.
But that's what's happening. Yeah. I feel like maybe this is on you guys for not having anyone on staff at night.
Yeah.
I don't think that this is their fault.
So Elvis says that they did the only thing they could do. They lied. But after their interrogation is over, Elvis makes his way over to where Kimosabe died, discovering his discarded Lone Ranger mask and picking it up. After looking it over, ruminating on the loss of his old friend, he's promptly joined by Jack, who places a reassuring hand on his shoulder and guides him onward down the hall. Elvis stashes Kimosabe's mask in his robe pocket as he turns to walk away with Jack, and we fade to black. When we return, we set our eyes on the very familiar sight of a hearse parked out in front of Shady Rest. The two hearse drivers open the front door, carrying both ends of the stretcher, with Kimosabe's body on top inside of a white body bag. The first driver notes that life sure is fleeting, and when the second driver responds incredulously, the first driver explains that 1 minute you're here and the next minute you're gone. But lost in his existentialism, the first driver stumbles over a brick wall on the porch, sending Kimosabe's body flying off of the stretcher and into the bushes that line the property.
Come on, man. There's got to be another mortuary.
I know.
This can't be the only gig in town. It can't.
The first driver quickly recovers with the help of his colleague, the pair clumsily reloading Kimosabe back onto the stretcher, with the first driver directing. Nonchalant.
Don't be suspicious.
Don't say it out loud.
No. But they load the body inside of the hearse, the first driver posturing awkwardly, as the second can do nothing but call his colleague a fucking idiot before they rush to the front seat of the hearse. I was obviously, you knew they were going to show up for Kimosabe.
Yeah.
But there's another corpse in that gardener's shed.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you forget.
Yeah. Well, a lot happens.
They did.
That's true. But sometime later, Elvis stands outside in the sun, breathing in a small handful of yellow wildflowers as he takes in the morning air and atmosphere. But he's interrupted by the nurse, who calls out to him from the porch, "Mr. Half?" before promptly correcting herself to Mr. Presley. As she approaches him across the front lawn, Elvis waves her away. She then acknowledges that he appears to be looking much stronger, but says that he shouldn't be out here too long, reminding him that it's not only time for his nap, but time for them to do that little, But Elvis whips around, shouting, "You fuck off, you patronizing bitch."
All right.
Yeah.
She didn't deserve all that.
No.
She didn't deserve all that.
No, I was quite shocked. Because
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking this film was going to be, at least with the nurse going into the finale.
Right.
I thought that they might get together. I don't know. I don't know.
I thought they
got
might fall in
married.
love.
Yeah, so I don't know what they were planning.
Well, I feel like we're kind of watching this awakening
Right.
in Elvis where he seems a little more with it. He's a little more driven. He's less reliant on his walker. He even explicitly stated that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm expecting like I don't need that. I can, take care of myself or whatever. Like I thought it would be a shift of like, oh no, I don't need to be treated like a patient anymore. Because I am feeling better and I am feeling more capable. But him being like, fuck off, bitch. Like, that's
It was surprising.
That's not what I was expecting. And the last interaction y'all had was like, you were cutting up and fucking like, I really wasn't expecting that.
Well, it was that because him saying that when they were in the bed and being friendly. And I mean, that was, out of pocket. And
It was,
shit, but
yeah.
Y'all were both friendly. You both, whatever, you're adults. She walked away.
Mm-hmm.
And then for him to freak out like that, I was like, hold on. This is not the turn.
Yeah, I
No.
really thought it would just be like, well, I don't need you to do that anymore.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
But yeah, I was like, Elvis, this is misplaced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even earlier, she was like, if it's not my favorite patient.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, fuck you.
Crazy.
It was really
Yeah.
weird.
But the nurse's mouth hangs agape in shock as Elvis continues that he's sick of her shit and that he'll lube his own crankshaft from now on. He warns that if she treats him like a baby again, he'll wrap his goddamn walker around her head.
Come on.
This
Yeah.
is crazy.
And now we're threatening violence?
Yeah.
Come on.
She's trying to take care of you, dude.
Yes.
I don't think they're getting together.
Yeah.
I hate to break this to you, T.
The nurse just retreats in speechless surprise, but Elvis ventures onward to another part of the facility, inspecting the door that the mummy disappeared through the night before. As he runs his fingers along its solid edges, he asks, "Now how the hell did that mummy do that?" He continues on solo, eventually reaching a small creek at the edge of the property, peering down from the top of a long, steep hill. He steels himself before attempting to maneuver his way down on his walker, reaching the bottom with great effort and concentration, catching his breath as he looks back at the precarious path he just traveled.
Real quick, I will say I know he said earlier he didn't need the walker, but watching him, he has, and I was like, he committed. He has the same walk. He's using the same, like, one foot is more heavy than the other one. The walker is, and it's very believable.
Uh-huh.
Like, I was like, oh no, you're using that walker naturally.
Yeah, I was impressed with the way he was maneuvering with it. though.
Yeah.
Like, going down the thing.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
But there before him stretches the bridge that he saw in a vision the night before. His hand resting on his bad hip, he wonders where Bubba Ho-Tep could have gone, or where he came from, and how the hell he got here. But there, in the water, right in front of him, within the reeds, Elvis discovers a license plate floating just beneath the surface. A license plate for a bus. I did laugh. The last letters of the license plate are BB, and I was like, is that Bubba? Is that supposed to be? But a really wild thing that I learned, this was the last shot that they filmed for the film.
Oh.
And it was actually filmed in Coscarelli's backyard. It was him and his son, and it was a trash bag filled with water.
Wow. That's really impressive.
Yeah.
But Kemosabe's voice echoes in his mind. The bridge. I saw him under the bridge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Elvis pieces this together with the vision that he saw last night of a bus speeding through the rain and crashing through the signs that lined the bridge, which read, "Bridge Out." With a proper theory gathered, Elvis heads back toward Shady Rest. I'm glad that he's arrived at this. I think we all did last night.
Well, I was going to say, well, he was showing some signs.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Elvis staggers back to his bedroom, breathing heavily as he finally reaches his mattress, clattering into a sweaty seat in his dirt-covered clothes. But as he catches his breath, glancing downward at the worry resting between his legs, his voiceover intones, "It's cancer." And he assumes that they're just keeping the truth from him because he's old, and to them, it doesn't matter. They think that the age will kill him first, and though they're probably right, suck them. He claims that he knows what it is, and if it isn't, it might as well be. He reaches wearily for the jar of ointment on the nightstand, twisting off the cap and scooping a fair amount of it with 2 fingers, just as the nurse did, and applying it down below to no consequence, collapsing into his bed afterwards and adjusting his mattress to lift him upward as he switches on the television. And you see when Elvis does it, it only took like 5 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no grease on his hands.
No. Amidst an array of stars and framed by film reels, on-screen text boasts a 24-hour Elvis Presley movie marathon. A variety of vintage clips plays as an announcer, played by Bruce Rowitz, invites the viewer to watch Elvis outstrum, outrace, outfight, and outwit the bad guys, while at the same time, he'll slay all the girls. Elvis just shakes his head in bed, admonishing them as shitty pictures, every single one. These are not real clips from Elvis movies, they said. Like, we couldn't afford a second of that. And so they just picked films that were affordable that appeared to feature someone who might look like Elvis from behind.
Okay.
But as Elvis glances away from the television and over in the direction of Bull's empty bed, his inner voice criticizes himself for lying there, complaining about his loss of pride, only to realize that he never had any pride. And in fact, much of how life had treated him had been good, and the bulk of the bad was his own damn fault. He adds that he should have fired Colonel Parker by the time he got into the pictures, noting that that old fart had been a shark and a fool, and he was an even bigger fool for following him. Some inside baseball and
Yeah.
Elvis lore, but it only lends credence to the fact that this man really is Elvis.
Yeah, that's true.
But he then laments, "If only I had treated Priscilla right. If I could have told my daughter I loved her." He surmises solemnly that it's always the questions and never the answers, always the hopes, never the fulfillments. With emotion etched into his somber face, Elvis's solitude is disturbed by Jack, who suddenly appears in his doorway, clutching a manila folder. The king invites him inside, and Jack explains that he had the woman who calls herself his niece come and get him, and she took him downtown this morning to the newspaper morgue and helped him do some research on the mummy.
So again, another soberingly and surprisingly existential moment from Elvis.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then my crippling disappointment that we completely missed a research scene.
Yeah. We needed to see Elvis put on the ointment, I guess.
I'd rather be down at the newspaper. Elvis didn't even wash his hands.
No, he did not.
He's filthy.
Yeah.
Elvis asks if he learned something about the mummy, and as Jack pulls up a chair, he assures him that he learned plenty. Peeling open the envelope, Jack explains that one of the lesser mummies, on loan from the Egyptian government, was being circulated all over the United States to museums. He passes a folder over to Elvis, who opens it to peruse the newspaper clippings inside. Elvis asks if he means like King Tut or something, but Jack qualifies it more as like King Tut's brother. But this mummy was flown or taken by train from state to state, and when it got to Texas, it was stolen. He says that evidence points to it being stolen at night by a couple of guys in a silver bus. Elvis remembers seeing this in his vision the night before, but Jack continues that the thieves broke into the museum and stole it in hopes of a ransom. But what they didn't count on was one of the worst storms in East Texas history, finding them that night. Elvis correctly guesses from his own investigation that the bus was washed away, and Jack adds that the mummy was then imprisoned by the debris from the storm. Elvis still doesn't understand how the mummy could have come back to life, or even more so, how he could have found himself in the mummy's memories. Jack admits that the speculation broadens from here.
That fucking made me laugh out loud. He's like, look, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, well.
We're flying by the seat of our pants right now.
We're filling in a lot of blanks.
But he says that from what he's read, some mummies are buried without their names with a curse put on their sarcophagus. Elvis rises up from his mattress, positing that Bubba Ho-Tep is one of them. Maybe when he's in his coffin, he's just a dried-up old corpse, but when the bus got washed away, maybe it set him free of the coffin and the curse. Jack agrees that he would be free from imprisonment, but he would still need souls. And Elvis realizes that the mummy is free to have them now, just to keep on feeding and feeding, unless he's finally destroyed. But with the backstory out of the way, Elvis wonders what they're supposed to do now. And Jack suggests changing resting homes might be a good idea.
He's not wrong.
No.
Though he can't think of much else than that, he does offer one fact. This mummy is a nighttime kind of guy, so he plans to go to sleep now in the daytime and set his alarm just before dark to get himself a couple cups of coffee.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Elvis emphatically agrees, adding that he doesn't want that mummy slapping his lips on his asshole. I mean, yeah, dude. We've established that. But before making his exit, Jack notes that this mummy has the proverbial bird's nest on the ground here at Shady Rest. And after he departs, Elvis just shifts uncomfortably in his bed. Instead of attempting to fall asleep, though, he pontificates. What do I really have left but this place? And though it isn't much of a home, he says that it's still all he's got. His strength returning to him, Elvis rises from his mattress, clutching his walker as he announces, "Well, God damn it, I'll be damned if I let some foreign graffiti-writing, soul-sucking son of a bitch in an oversized cowboy hat and boots take my friend's souls and shit him out down the visitor's toilet." Now,
All right.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that he's going to
Yeah.
do all of this. But after writing that, I was like, there are some sentences that have never been said before.
Yeah.
This is absolutely one of them.
Definitely one of them.
But as he leans against the dresser on the other side of the room, Elvis remembers that in the movies, he always played heroic types. But when the stage lights went out, it was time for drugs, stupidity, and the coveting of women. But now, it's time to be a little of what he always fantasized about being. A hero. Elvis reaches for his telephone, dialing Jack in his room, who sits at a desk next to a file literally marked M for mummy.
Yes. That's fucking hilarious.
But Jack answers his very red telephone, and on the other end, Elvis addresses him. "Mr. Kennedy, ask not what your rest home can do for you. Ask what you can do for your rest home." Jack bristles. "Hey, you're copying my best lines." And this prompts Elvis to paraphrase one of his own instead. "Let's take care of business." Jack wonders just what Elvis is getting at, and Elvis assures the former president that he knows exactly, summing it up. "We're gonna kill us a mummy." Jack lowers his phone back to the hook in seeming surprise. I don't know what else he thought this was going to be about.
Yeah. But okay, let's get a plan together.
Hell yeah. But that night, the men gather their materials together in Jack's quarters, Jack marking the items off of a checklist as Elvis confirms them. 2 bottles of rubbing alcohol, along with a spray canister that Elvis snatched from the storage room, matches, a cigarette lighter. And when Jack asks if Elvis has procured a uniform, the king snags his signature white bejeweled bell-bottom jumpsuit, announcing, "Big check on that, baby." He tosses it to Jack's bed, and Jack, to his credit, tosses a proper suit on top, noting that he even has a nice pair of black shoes to go with it.
Listen, call them ranch because they be dressing.
Yeah.
But the list concludes with scissors, which Elvis brandishes, tossing them aside with the other gathered materials. Jack then glances over at his wheelchair ensuring Elvis that he has it all oiled up and ready to roll. But even more, he shares that he's picked some words of power from his book of magic. He isn't sure that they'll stop a mummy, but he says that they're supposed to ward off evil. He shares a couple of scraps of paper where they've been written down, one for each of them, which Elvis accepts, supposing that they'll just use what they've got. But when he attempts to confirm that they'll meet back here at 2:45 a.m., Jack suggests that at the rate that they travel, maybe they should meet instead at 2:30. But in a moment of vulnerability, Elvis asks sincerely, "Say, Jack, do we know what the hell we're doing, man?" Jack admits that they don't, but he notes that they say that fire cleanses evil, and for their sake, he hopes that they, whoever they are, is right. The two men put their wrists together to synchronize their watches and set their alarms, and after they do, Elvis offers the two key words for the night, drawing upon his own personal experience: caution and flammable. But Jack adds 3 more words: watch your ass. And late that night, or in the earliest morning hours, Jack rounds the corner at the end of the long, empty corridor in his wheelchair, dressed in his dark suit, and followed closely by Elvis, who dons his famous white jumpsuit, the low light lining the walls glinting off of his bespectacled body as he leans on his walker to accompany his friend down the hall to their mission.
It's showtime.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This was a good shot.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. It I'll be honest, it had me cheering. I was like, that's right,
Yeah.
one more time. One more
Yeah.
ride, oh man. It was really cool.
Triumphant music sounds in the score as the men reach the door at the end, where Bubba Ho-Tep disappeared the night prior, Jack switching off the security system, and Elvis snipping the wires above the door before they make their silent exit from the building. Once outside, Elvis fills the spray canister with the bottles of alcohol, Jack noticing something dangling from his neck and asking him about it. Elvis explains that it's his medicine bag, claiming that natives used to wear them into battle and that it's full of all kinds of lucky stuff. He reaches inside, retrieving Kemosabe's mask and Bull's purple heart, declaring, "See here? Mucho mojo," before stashing them away and unveiling a small photograph which he unfolds for Jack to see. He reveals, "That's my daughter," and Jack nods in solemn understanding, confessing that neither of them were there for their kids when they needed them. Elvis sighs lamentful, wishing that he could just talk to her one more time, to tell her that he loves her, to try to make things right somehow. But Jack reassures Elvis that there's no time for regrets and suggests that they were the best fathers that they could be under their circumstances. Elvis agrees, stashing his totems back into the medicine bag, declaring that they've got business to take care of. And to the spray canister filled with alcohol, Elvis tops it off with a little gasoline, which he says that he stole from the gardener when he wasn't looking. So the gardener's been back in that shed. I don't know, man. Jack just smirks that it's going to be one hell of a barbecue, and Elvis seals the lid, tossing the canister over his shoulder on a strap. He places a cigar into his mouth, announcing, "Let's do it, amigo." The cigar is risky.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when Jack begins to ride away on his motorized chair, Elvis stops him, revealing that he just has one more question. Marilyn. When Jack just stares blankly at him, Elvis pleads, "Come on, man, Marilyn Monroe. What was she like in the sack?" Jack snaps that is classified information, top secret. But between the two of them, wow. Jack rides away.
The about face that he takes after he says that, I had me fucking laughing. He's like, all right.
Yeah, let's get to it. But Elvis admonishes him jokingly as an old dog before warning him to watch his back. As Jack disappears into the darkness of the path, Elvis hoofs it in the other direction. But we find Jack alone in the courtyard, owls hooting above him overhead in the trees as he travels fearful but determined in the lowly lit grass. He stops in front of a road closure sign at the center of a road, with Elvis watching from the distance, striking a match to light his cigar. His internal monologue is filled with worry, fearful that when Bubba Ho-Tep rises from that creek, he's going to be hungry and pissed off. Elvis posits that when they try to stop him, he'll probably jam this paint can over his shoulder up his ass, and then he'll jam him and that wheelchair up Jack's ass.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
It is.
all right.
It's not even what the mummy does.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Elvis smokes his cigar nervously as his eyes scan the area. And suddenly, through the darkness and between the trees, Elvis spies Bubba Ho-Tep creeping his way through the dark, the surrounding streetlights sizzling as he draws closer. Elvis reaches for the spray canister, pumping it to prepare for the incoming encounter, but when he looks up from his preparations, he discovers that the mummy is nowhere in sight. Fearful, Elvis calls out to Jack, only to discover the former president snoring and fast asleep in his wheelchair. With no other option, Elvis begins his trek across the courtyard to wake him, but he stops dead in his tracks in front of a tree when a foul wind begins to blow nearby, eerie sounds abounding all around him. And it's from his hiding place behind the tree that Bubba Ho-Tep makes his presence known. But before he can get the drop on Elvis, the king turns around, using his walker to create some distance between them, forcing the creature forward and pinning him to a nearby tree. The mummy swipes at Elvis, knocking the walker away and the king to the grass. This clatter awakens Jack, who, after seeing that their battle has begun, rides over to help his friend. Elvis rises to his feet, and as he takes a karate stance, he warns, "Don't make me use my stuff on you, baby."
It's like, wow, they're really going for it.
Leaning on his walker, he punches swiftly through the air, offering a mid-level kick, which only results in his hip cracking in pain as Bubba Ho-Tep looks on, almost sympathetically. But when Jack rides up behind him, putting the monster between his two would-be adversaries, Bubba Ho-Tep literally just turns and walks away. The pair watch as he ventures onward through the trees, and suddenly and seemingly, he disappears.
I feel like that's not fair.
No.
Wondering where he could have possibly gone, Jack volunteers to search for him, Elvis urging him to be careful. But Jack rides on as Elvis's eyes scan the area again, only to discover, hilariously, that the mummy is literally just hiding behind a tree. There's no magic there. As he lies in wait for Jack, Elvis cries out to the former president, but it's too late, and Bubba Ho-Tep lurches out, backhanding Jack across the face and out of his chair. As he tumbles to the ground, his chair rides off without him towards Elvis, who takes notice of it. Jack struggles against the mummy on the ground as Elvis upgrades his walker for Jack's chair, taking a properly timed seat and snagging the spray canister on his way to Jack's rescue. Bubba Ho-Tep draws closer, his withered jaw yawning open as he cinches his hand around Jack's throat. There is more than one way to take a soul.
Yeah.
But before he can make a meal of Jack, Elvis disturbs his plans, the chair's tires screeching to a halt as he catches the mummy's attention with a whistle, antagonizing, "Come and get it, you undead sack of shit." Offended, Bubba Ho-Tep. He rises up from Jack, his tattered clothes hanging and swaying over his ruined ribs as he growls, to the accompaniment of floating hieroglyphics that I don't believe are actual.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
This is an intriguing development.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
No. But it reads, "By the unwinking red eye of Ra." The symbols scatter as he steps over Jack's body to approach Elvis, and just as he gets close enough, Elvis snags the canister, spraying Bubba Ho-Tep with the flammable concoction. The mummy cowers from it, but when he turns to face Elvis again, the king flicks his lighter open, offering, "Sorry, man," before tossing the small flame at the mummy. He immediately catches fire, his entire upper body engulfed as he screeches, stumbling away through the courtyard, only to collapse in a flaming heap.
So Bob Ivy was really lit on fire.
Unbelievable.
Damn.
Bruce Campbell really ignited the fire.
Okay.
And the stunt coordinator was just screaming at him where to step and where to fall. Because obviously he can't fucking see.
Yeah.
Is on fire.
Yeah, he's on fire. He's currently on fire.
I was a little worried. Him spraying that, I was like, how much of that is going to get on you?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. But with the villain seemingly vanquished, Elvis turns his attention to Jack, tumbling out of the chair to stir his friend awake. He asks, "Mr. Kennedy?" Jack just moans in pain, looking up at Elvis and declaring with certainty, "The president is soon dead." Wild choice.
Yeah.
I have to applaud the absurdity of that,
Yeah.
but it's wild.
Yeah, it's a lot.
He then hands a folded up piece of paper to the king, telling him that now it's up to him. He has to get him. He's got to take care of business. The score grows sincere and somber as Jack slips away, his eyes closing for the final time. But Elvis echoes Jack's last words. "That's right, man. TCB." He rises to his feet, offering a salute to his fallen friend and reciting a respectful, "Mr. President." But he returns his attention to the smoking skeletal scoundrel that is Bubba Ho-Tep, unfolding Jack's letter and reading the prepared remarks that fill the page. "You nasty thing from beyond the dead, no matter what you think or do, good things will never come to you. And if evil is your black design, you can bet the goodness of the light ones will kick your bad behind."
I mean, he tried.
He did.
Yeah.
He tried.
Yeah.
Understandably disappointed. Elvis is incredulous that this is the chant against evil from the Book of Souls. He notes that it doesn't even rhyme well.
Yeah, I was.
And it doesn't.
I was happy that he had the words this time instead of trying to guess them.
Fair.
Yeah.
Or remember them.
Yes.
Yeah. They were a little underwhelming here.
You know. But his admonishment is interrupted when Bubba Ho-Tep rises from the ground, shaking his fist at Elvis with a growl, once again accompanied by crude hieroglyphic subtitles. "Eat the dog dick of Anubis, you asswipe." Now this is the toilet writing.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this fits the character that we've come to expect.
Yeah.
Incensed, Elvis takes to Jack's chair, announcing that it's time for ACTION. He rides right for the mummy, who leaps onto the chair with him, the pair trading punches as they head straight for the hill overlooking the creek.
The fist fighting. Not really what I expected.
They sail off of it, careening downward in a treacherous tumble, and once they reach the bottom, Elvis, assessing the damage, discovers a vibrant red wound marring the white of his ornate outfit.
Once again, they made a dummy of Elvis to sit in this wheelchair to careen off of this hill, but it's really Bob Ivy taking this fall
Damn.
with the dummy in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
A beast.
Yeah.
As Elvis tries to collect himself, Bubba Ho-Tep crawls for him, seizing him by the throat as he mounts him. Luckily for Elvis, the canister has also tumbled nearby, but when he tries to spray the mummy, Bubba Ho-Tep just beats him into submission with a stick.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
That was crazy.
What the hell am I watching?
Elvis's desperate hand reaches for the canister again, only to pull off the lid, leaving the flammable liquid leaking into the grass around them. But with one stern smash, the mummy knocks the king in his crown, his vision growing blurry. As his eyes search around dazed from behind his glasses, Elvis intones, "I was going out, and if I did, not only would I be one dead son of a bitch, but so would my soul. I'd just be so much crap. No afterlife, no reincarnation, no angels with harps." He realizes that whatever lay beyond would remain unknown to him. It would all end right here for Elvis Aaron Presley. Nothing but a quick flush. Facing this frightening reality, Elvis summons the last of his strength and courage as he seizes the mummy by his tattered rags, clenching his ringed hand into a fist and announcing, "TCB, baby." He clocks the creature across the jaw, and Bubba Ho-Tep staggers backwards to the ground, giving Elvis just enough time to retrieve the matchbook from his medicine bag. He strikes one, its small flame dancing on the tip as he declares, "Your soul-sucking days are over, amigo." He lights the trail of flammable liquid, Bubba Ho-Tep unable to believe his eyes as it catches, the fire riding its way right to him, engulfing his entire body in flames. He writhes in pain, an unearthly screech escaping him as he crumbles to the dirt, splashing into the water at the creek's edge. He floats face down and motionless as the fire flickers on his back, the nightmare finally over. I know that we said, of course, fire was going to cleanse the evil.
Right.
I feel like maybe if we didn't use fire twice in a row, it would
Yeah.
have worked a little better. I wanted to see maybe they tried the words and the mummy feigned as if it did work.
Right.
And then he fucking comes back and kills Jack or whatever.
Right.
And then we finally torch him at the end.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, just more fire.
More-
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But Elvis lies in the grass, peering down at the wound in his chest, every breath agonizing. A slow guitar accompanies his final narration as he describes the pain as something hard inside, grating against something soft, like a water balloon with a hole poked in it. He realizes that he's going down for the last count, but he still has his soul. It's still his, all his. Elvis's eyes glancing up the hill, he declares that the folks there at Shady Rest, they have their souls too, and they're going to keep them, every single one. His eyes gaze upward to the heavens, the bright stars in the blue evening beginning to rearrange before his very eyes, forming three symbols to the accompaniment of a pensive piano, text beneath it translating to, "All is well." And before Elvis slips into death, he offers his final words to the stars above him. "Thank you. Thank you very much." We fade to black, and the credits roll. I will say that after the credits roll, they do tease a sequel,
Oh.
claiming that Elvis will return in a film called Bubba Nosferatu, Curse of the She-Vampires, starring Sebastian Haff.
Now, how the hell?
Oh.
From what I understand, considering Bruce Campbell was, I think, like we said, 44 maybe?
Mm-hmm.
And he's playing this elderly Elvis with all this aged makeup.
Yeah.
They're like, maybe something also happened when Elvis was younger.
No, you can't.
I feel like there's no way he wouldn't have talked about that.
No.
I also fought vampires when I was...
Well, he would have believed this more.
Yes,
If that already
yes.
happened.
But another thing that they had said was that maybe, because Elvis made a lot of movies, maybe this was a movie that he made when he was younger, and we kind of get the story of that. But this has, like, languished, I think is the word, in development hell since this film came out.
Okay.
And there were a lot of discussions and a lot of ideas that were kicked around.
Yeah.
And what had happened, I guess, the Colonel, Elvis's manager or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Coscarelli cast Paul Giamatti to play him. And so a lot of the updates through the years that I've read have come from Paul Giamatti.
What?
What?
Yeah. And because he was in John Dies at the End, and I guess he talked about it a little bit on the commentary track. And then in interviews, he talked about it, saying that it was still potentially going to get made.
Yeah.
But over the years, Bruce Campbell gets interviewed, and he's like, we had a lot of disagreements, and in order to preserve my friendship with Don Coscarelli, I'm not going to be in this film.
Oh, okay.
I guess a lot of the ideas were potentially that it was going to be a younger Elvis, but then also some moments of the older Elvis, and he's like, I don't know how that even works.
Right.
Yeah.
But according to, I think it was a Bloody Disgusting article that I read, one of the ideas was going to be that it was this thing making a movie, Elvis is Bruce Campbell, etc. Bruce Campbell was not a big fan of it. And so he said, look, if you get Joe Lansdale to script the sequel, I'll be in it. And so they did, but it took Lansdale 3 years to write a sequel idea.
God damn.
And after reading it, Bruce Campbell's like, look, I'm out. I'm not,
Yeah. Well, if it took that long, he's probably forcing it, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like, my Elvis days are over.
Yeah. They've left the building.
Yeah.
so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Very good. But I guess they were still trying to get it made, and they were kicking around a bunch of different people that could play Elvis that they hoped would agree to it.
Yeah.
So they said, what about Kurt Russell?
Mm-hmm.
What about Ron Perlman?
Oh.
What about The Rock?
Oh.
I don't know.
And it hasn't been made.
Maybe that's for the best.
Yeah. But, I mean, Paul Giamatti says that it's still going to happen, and so does Don Coscarelli.
Wild.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But the credits have rolled. So what did you guys think of Bubba Ho-Tep?
This was a really fun movie. It was, again, I did really, really enjoy it. I don't think it did anything too over the top, like scary, or like too, comedy, like, oh my God, that was, but it was great. And I can see how, if you really like this movie, I see it. And if you don't, no, I understand.
Yeah.
Like, I completely understand. But I had a really fun time. And I do think that a lot of the comedy and the little, slapstick, him fighting with the fucking bug and whatever, and using the bedpan and being like, where are you at now? It's just very funny. But I think it also, Bruce Campbell is really good at doing that. He's very good at doing those types of things. And this was there for him. And I really did. And everybody did. Ossie Davis did a real good job.
Yes.
Like, fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just this was a really fun movie. Like I said, I'll be honest, I seen it. I do enjoy it. That, I feel like, for me, that's enough.
Which is wild coming from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't watch it again.
Right.
But I mean, I think if this was it, cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. My last note was, wow, what a weird little movie.
Yeah.
They really did their own thing. I will piggyback and agree that I think the performances were really, really good. Everybody was really committed to what they were doing.
Yeah.
And in a movie like this, that's a must, or it's just not going to work. Like, you have to fully lean into the ridiculousness of mummies and Elvis and JFK and just there's so much. There's really so much. I think the music is outstanding.
Yes.
I think that is really like a shining point of the film. But some of it is just like, okay, what, like, I feel like you almost get whiplash with how we are kind of existentially pondering aging and the meaning of life and legacy and regrets and being forgotten because you're getting older and your body and your mind aren't working the way that they used to, and looking back on your accomplishments and what you long for and what you regret and what you're proud of. And then we're talking about sucking ass and writing dirty hieroglyphics in the bathroom, and it's just like, okay, hold on, you know what I mean? Like, we're stabbing scarabs, we're fucking, like, it's truly really all over the place. I commend such an original idea in what we've got going on with Elvis and Sebastian Haff. I think that by itself is a really interesting and compelling story, and then you add fucking mummies and JFK and conspiracy, and I think that this movie is doing a lot, and some of it is really successful for me, and some of it leans a little too much into ridiculousness.
Yeah.
And I love a good, silly ass movie.
Mm-hmm.
There are just some instances that it's executed that I'm like, that's what that's what we chose.
That's fair.
But I mean, it is a good time, like you said, John Paul. I don't know that it's one that I will immediately reach for again to watch.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody else wants to watch it or it's on, I will. But I don't think I'll ever be like, oh my God, let's watch Bubba Ho-Tep.
Yeah.
That being said, I am glad that I did watch it, that I have seen it now, because it's a fun time with shockingly heavy and real themes at times,
Yeah.
and pure fun and ridiculousness at other times.
Yeah, I can't possibly agree more.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I definitely have more fun with it than I don't.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I feel like it really is such an original idea that I don't even know how.
Yeah. Where did you get this from?
Yeah.
It's just the idea of it being Elvis Presley alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then like teaming him up with this weird conspiracy theory, JFK. It's just so odd, but it's very unique.
Right.
You're never going to see a film like this again unless that Bubba Nosferatu comes out. Which I think, honestly, and Bruce Campbell said it himself, it's like lightning in a bottle. He's like, you don't do this again.
Yeah.
I'm kind of leaning more towards that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Paul Giamatti,
No,
I
yeah.
would really love to see what the hell that looks like.
Uh-huh.
But I feel like there are some things that you kind of just need to leave alone.
Yeah.
And this feels like one of the Bubba Nosferatu. It's enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
It's like, okay.
Because I think that there's a novelty to this.
Yeah.
And a charm to it that, again, if it starts becoming, like I joked at the beginning of this Elvis cinematic universe,
Yes.
Yeah.
you're going to lose all of that.
You
Oh,
can't
yeah.
milk it. You just have to
No.
let it be what it is.
I think if it's gonna be that, it needs to start that way.
yeah.
Right.
Don't take that and then, because you're always gonna try to keep reaching that level, and
For
you
sure.
just won't.
Yeah.
And this is its own contained story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, look, the draw to this film is not Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
The draw to this film is Bruce Campbell.
Yes.
Right.
And so once that ship has sailed, I think we gotta go ahead and sink it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I agree wholeheartedly. We can just slide right into ratings.
Yeah.
The film is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That it attempts to tackle so much that it is like a little bit of slapstick.
Right.
It has these interesting and surprisingly poignant existential conversations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then this weird gross out humor of like, buttholes and shit.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
It is a wild time. It is Bubba Ho-Tep. It's its own thing.
It
Yeah.
really is.
And you're really not going to see another film like this.
Mm-mm.
So, I mean, there is some credit to be given, and also just the independent spirit of this thing.
Yeah.
How much went into this because a creative team and a group of actors really liked the idea,
Yeah.
really believed in it, and wanted to make it even despite everyone basically telling them not to. And that's studios, that's agents of these actors.
Yeah.
Everybody really didn't want this to get made.
Yeah.
And and it did.
And here we
It
are.
did, yeah.
And it's fairly fun.
Yes.
I enjoy it. But, there are some narrative issues that we were talking a little bit off mic about all the different ways that it could have gone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that we thought that is because there were so many threads of seemingly leading towards each and every one of the things that could have happened.
Yeah.
Why is the nurse just like, no, I'm going back to work and that's it?
And we never see her again.
Yeah.
When it's so clear that the mummy saw her. I know, it's ridiculous.
The mummy with boots.
Yeah, that mummy was looking, and he was probably thinking about a younger soul.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Like, I feel like the nerds on The Simpsons where they're like, without the wizard's key.
What the hell are you talking about?
But he striked the same rib twice in succession.
Produce two different sounds.
Yeah, but no, it is like that because it is kind of odd that this nurse plays no role in the finale.
Yeah.
And it really, the last time you see her does not feel like it should be the last time that you see her.
No, it feels like a setup.
Yeah.
And the way that he snaps at her, you're like, oh, we're not going to redeem that at all?
No.
Yeah.
That was the last interaction.
That was it.
So there are a few, but I do have a decent amount of fun with this film regardless. But I want to single out the music again.
Yes.
It is so good. And I think that next script that I write will break the streak of me just exclusively talking about Brian Tyler. But Brian Tyler, great work.
Yeah.
And it's down to those performances, especially Bruce Campbell and Ossie Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible work with this material. You can't imagine anybody else in these roles.
Yeah.
They did an amazing job. But for me, out of 10 sinisterly sucked out souls, I am going to give Bubba Ho-Tep 6.5 sinisterly sucked out souls out of 10. I was going to give it a 6, but I feel like its originality needs to be applauded.
Yeah.
Because this is not connected to fucking anything.
No.
And they really did their own thing, and they did it well.
Yeah.
But I will now open the floor to you.
No, yeah, I think this movie is a lot of fun. I think too, I know we say it all the time, but I would just be repeating myself. I did enjoy this. I like the silly shit a little more, and this was, you know what I mean? It was right there for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that for those reasons that you mentioned is why this worked. Nobody wanted this to happen.
Yeah.
None of them, everybody was like, no.
Mm-hmm.
So for them to go and say, no, we're doing this and making it happen and this turning out, bravo. That's fine. I had a good time. Yeah, the fucking title's Bubba Ho-Tep.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like, what do you expect?
Yeah,
Really?
I get it, and I do know that the plot is weird. You know what I mean? The fucking story is just there. But it is something to watch and smile at and be like, this was cool. This was a cool little idea. Like you're saying, it is original. And for it to work and them to get it off the ground, I do feel like this is it. No more. Don't Bubba anything else. Ferratu, Frankenstein, anything. Don't do anything else. This is it. Because this will be remembered for what it is. But with all that said, I did have a really good time. And talking about it, you know what I mean? An even better time.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, on a scale from 1 to 10, sinisterly sucked out souls, I'm going to give Bubba Ho-Tep a 7 out of 10. The 0.5 extra for Bruce Campbell.
Right.
Fair.
Because it's Bruce. But, I mean, this is a fun movie. I would recommend anyone to watch it, even just to have it in your catalog.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Oh, no, yeah, that's in the library up here. I did watch that one time.
Yeah.
Okay, bet. I pointed to my mind. Nobody can
It's up
see that.
here.
Yeah, but it's up here. But you know what I mean? I would recommend it. But it is what it is. I wouldn't go in expecting anything else.
For sure. Yeah, I think you guys about summed it up. I do just want to again shout out the music. The makeup is really impressive.
Yeah.
The costumes are really, really great, and the stunt work is really admirable because they put that man through a lot. Yeah. But yeah, I kind of came to the same conclusion where it's like, for what this is, it's a lot of fun, and it is very unique. It's its own thing. It is an accomplishment of kind of indie filmmaking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Bruce Campbell, he really shines.
Yeah.
He really does. I don't think he knows how to not.
Yeah.
So on a scale from 1 to 10, sinisterly sucked out souls, I also gave Bubba Ho-Tep 6.5 out of 10. The narrative really does its own thing. Yeah. I will say too, something that I forgot to mention is how quick the ending is.
It's over. Yeah.
I know that we are doing mummy shit here, but it is really reminiscent of the old Universal horror where they tell their story and they're like, okay, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
It's true. Well, that's all from us at Pod Mortem. What would you rate Bubba Ho-Tep, and what should we watch next? Let us know on Instagram at the Pod Mortem. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and like our Stairhole Productions page on Facebook. Be sure to follow each of us on Instagram and Blue Sky at TravisMWH, at Blood and Smoke, and at JuggaloDaddy84. Thanks again to Original Cinematic for sponsoring this week's episode. Please consider pledging to our Patreon, where you'll gain access to over 200 hours of bonus content, our monthly schedule, our Discord server, and the opportunity to help us decide which films to cover. And if you're looking for Pod Mortem and Stairhole Productions merch, follow the link in our episode notes. Stay tuned until after the music for a special thank you to our Wendigo Getter patrons. And remember, don't get so wrapped up in society's expectations of you. No matter your age, live your best life so there are no regrets when it's time to leave the building. Until next time. Thank you for staying tuned. We want to give a very special thank you to all of our Wendigo Getter patrons.
Woo! Yeah!
Very good. A special thank you to
Chris Ontiveros, Kristen Lofton, Megan Martinez, Kimberly Bass, Sophie Hodson, Anthony Jerome M., Jordan Nash, Kent Morton, Lala Thomas, Travis Anissa Hunter, Miguel Myers ATX, Jennifer Perez, Allison O'Neill, Carissa, TJ and Angie Bronson, Andy Teague, Applin Ontiveros, Karima Rhodes, Kimberly Kleindienst, Sydney Smith, Bobby Holmes, Donna Eason, JD Rezak, Molly Gerhard, Armand Spasto, Aaron Aguirre, Eggy, William Berry, Charity Oxner, Amanda Six, Mandy Rainwater, Eden, Jordan Roberts, Dylan, Liz Heath, Spencer Montavo, Pancake the Panda, John Ramos, Michael Newting, Alexis Roberts, Dan Laveau, Itzy M, Gary Horton, Kate Lamp, Carlos and Sydney, Jessica Hunter, Helena Rudder, Alan Johnston, Mariah, Livy Fun, Scott Troutman Wise, Towton Watson, Mozzie Bear, Dave Burke, Emma Hagel Kissinger, Valerie G, Emiliana, CB, Taylor Santana, Will Lewison, Angelique, Smelly Poo Poo Head, Beth Bauer, Cookie, Esperanza J, Jason Cow OKC, Joshua Rumley, Danielle Peralta, Brandon, Sawyer Reese Farr, Sahara, Girl That's Scary, Cassandra, Andrea Simmons, Ashley Higuera, William and Xxena Rush, Ryan Brom, Megan Ochoa, Laura Lassiter, Eileen O, Marissa E, Henry F, Megan M, Strangely Sarah, Christy Beck, Nancy and Andy, Amanda Lopez, Andy Terrell, Jason Hanovan, Erica Morin,
Tris Wynn, K.87, Mariah Jensen, Carrie A, Lonnie Lono, Powell, Kayla E, Maggie H, Murder Stina, Kristen Marcy, Ori81 Boricua, Look Like That One Girl, Bog Boy, Felnez63, Alita Pui, Probably My Jugs, Kate Thackeray, Wade Pack, A Lizard, Bay J, Jay Rich, Topher Williams, Elena Metler, Valerie K, Christy Lee Kruger, Professor of Humanities Laura McCarricker, Naomi, Josh Smith, Autumn Green, Abby Kopp, Crystal 831, Skank Sinatra, Morgan Alexander, Tony Osteen, Julie Fredborg, Rihanna S, Daniel Taylor, Anna Kate, Heather Ortiz, Kim H, August, Vengeance Spirit, Jenny May, Glittery Fab, Malik Caselli Armstrong, Scarly D, Toya Shea, Katie, Martin Shaw, Star, Tyler J, Cam Davies, Patrick Hoagland, Raven, D, Wesley Tart, Kristen Jackson, Jacob Nordberg, Spencer, Samantha, Damian Grant, Half Price Horror, Clemmy, Nisi Nay, Erica, Jason X Rules, Karen Burrows, Aaron Norman, Stephen Rogers, Victoria Smith, Patricia A. Graham, Erasmo Pena, Danielle Wright, Tabitha Thomas, Richard Murray, Irene, Sally Slater 52, Jordan McCarthy, Christy Michelle Wilson, Rosalind Harnias, Emily Rance, Amy, Lisa and Kathy, Mike H.,
Christian Sadler, Hannah, Sarah Jack, Casey L., Evelyn Knight, Paula Garcia, Nikki M., Ghastly Grandad, Megan and Alexandra Saldivar, Lisa Sykes, Sunny Jonas, Kelsey Niemeyer Cook, The Face Flowers, JG, Morgan Novello, Ashley, Alex M., Brandon C., Gordon Sutherland, Georgia Renland, Ashley Poe, Najee P., Seth Schaff, Diana Joe, Connor Gormley, Carrie Parker, Katie Face, Jane Pillsbury, Caitlin Asher, Mia Franz, Pooh Bear, Spicy Caldera, This is the Zodiac speaking, Jason the Ghost, Moldy Tic Tac, Brian Ward, Tanner Rutgers, Gremlin Keeper 22, Sam Spade 666, Veronica, Kristen Rhodes, Daniel Laurent, Carmito, TVR, A Very Sweepy Baby, Randy Tucker, Nicholas Rage, A Lazy Boy, Nicola Williams, Sadison Miles, Jasmine, Stu Corbett, Daniel Smith, Brick O, Pull Out Lebowski, Jaden Nicole, Jody Grody, Lost Fan 08, George L. Robertson, Mercedes X Bleeple, Joel Miller Apologist, Jaylene Perry, Cool Trainer Elijah, Mrs. Bloomingdale, Sierra Duncan, Claire Cantwell, Renee Hart, Megan Likes Sleep, and Final Boy. Thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
We appreciate each and every one of you and just want to say once more, thank you. Thank you very much.
Very
Until next time.